Chapter 11:01 Dumb Genius Part 1. Isn't the water cold, Mommy? Have you become a mage like Uncle Lith? Lyria asked, incapable of speaking louder than a whisper. Hush, my child. Go back to sleep. Jolia caressed Lyria's small head, and her mesmerized made the child lose consciousness. My baby. Jolia literally cried a river that entered Lyria's nose and mouth, emitting a gurgling sound. I won't let anyone hurt you. I'm doing this because I love you and I can't bear the thought of living without you. In her mind, the image of her long dead daughter overlapped with Lyria as Jolia repeated the same words she had said before taking both their lives. The water flooding the small lungs also sucked the child's life force and replaced Jolia's suffering with the ecstasy of the feed, giving her a pleasure that made the entirety of Mogur fade away for a few precious moments. It was then that Abominus, Lyria's steed whenever she played in the fields of Lucia and her bodyguard the rest of the time, came out of the pile of toys next to the door. His cloaking ring hid both his life force and smell, while the orichalcum mouthpiece that covered his fangs was imbued with enough darkness magic to kill an elephant. The Ree exploited the undead's feeding frenzy to bite at her neck, decapitating Jolia with a twist of his powerful jaws, while the magic of the mouthpiece destroyed her body. The water disappeared along with the White Lady as the stolen life force returned to its rightful owner. Lyria gasped for air, crying for her mother at the top of her lungs while Abominus emitted a long, guttural howl that reached the Tron woods, alerting his pack. Oh fuck! With no more time to lose, Quoro opened Rena's door just a split second before a few hundred kilograms of red fur and unbridled fury jumped on her back, ripping her spine out. The vampire emitted a pulse of darkness magic that sent Abominus flying and turned his fur into a sickly shade of green. Don't worry about me and kill them. Quoro's spine was already fixing itself, but the injury needed a few seconds before healing enough to allow her to move again. Brago rushed inside, while Rena still stared dumbly at the two intruders without stopping to breastfeed her child. The room started to spin, and suddenly there was blood everywhere. Naurin's flight stopped abruptly a few hundreds of meters from Celia's home, but he didn't slow down. He just curled up in a ball, using air fusion to roll faster and earth magic to remove all obstacles from his path. He didn't need his eyes to perceive magical formations or the presence of undead. He could feel that the house was surrounded through the scales covering his anteater-like body. The only reason why the undead had yet to finish their job was the several arrays that Protector had left to guard his family. He wasn't a warden as good as Lith, but Faluel's help in setting them up had made the formation a tough nut to crack. Yet without someone to protect them, the arrays could be easily dismantled, and Protector had built them only to give Faluel the time to arrive. They were meant to stall, not to kill. One of the undead noticed the car-sized incoming cannonball and tried to stop it. The moment the Razar felt his momentum decreasing, he raised his scales to expose their razor-sharp edge and infused them with air and darkness magic. The enemy could stop his advance, but his rotation speed was unaffected by the living obstacle. The vampire realized that the cannonball had turned into a blender when the scales started to slice at his forearms after making short work of his fingers and palms. The creature kicked the curled-up Razar with all his strength, sending him flying in the middle of a group of armed undead who would quickly put the unknown enemy down. No one expected a golden chute to appear in midair, allowing the Emperor Beast to keep rolling towards Celia's house, while all they could do was to dumbfoundedly stare at the hard light construct. Their surprise grew when, instead of crashing against the defensive arrays and making the undead's job easier, Naurin passed through them. The magical formation recognized his energy signature and offered him no resistance. Celia, is everyone all right? Naurin had a hard time talking instead of taking down the closed door. Thank the gods you're here. Tell me that you've brought reinforcements. Celia let him in, closing the door quickly to not let the children see what was waiting for them outside. Yes, of course. I called Faluel Protector. Who cares about them? I'm talking about the kings of the woods. Celia cut him short, pointing at the very direction he had just come from. Are you telling me that you managed to forget about the 3 Emperor Beasts and 4 small armies of magical beasts who you could have asked for help? Celia clenched her own head with frustration so hard that she would have cut her skin if not for her very short nails. I'm sorry, but after Faluel said that it will take her a while to get here, I rushed here to protect you. It was the only thing I could think about. No matter how true those words were, Naurin still felt like an idiot. Excellent. Now you can die with us. Crash and Slash have been howling until now, but those bastards have hushed the area around the house. Celia slumped on a chair, wishing that people were as smart as magical beasts instead of humans. Neither the Re nor the SHYF liked how Celia had named them, but after making lots of damage to the house while playing with the children, they were too afraid of the alpha female to emit so much as a whimper of complaint. Are we really going to die, Mom? Lilia, the oldest sibling, said while tugging at Celia's leg. No way. Mom is just a bit stressed because your uncle made a huge mistake. She took Lilia in her arms, inwardly thanking the hush spell, which also prevented the kids from hearing the sound of the collapsing arrays. Can't you project a symbol in the sky with light magic? Something to call for help. Like what? I never spent time with the kings, nor did we agree on a distress signal. The more he spoke, the dumber Naurin felt. All that grieving and those inner monologues about not letting history repeat itself didn't teach me anything. I relied so much on Protector and Faluel that I never bothered arranging a single safety measure for my new family. He thought, do it anyway. It's still better than nothing. Celia snapped her fingers in front of his eyes to force him to focus more on reality and less on hindsight. Naurin did as instructed, emitting a pillar of golden light that reached over 100 meters, 328 feet, of height. Good job. Celia put Lilia down and then made sure that Fenrir, her youngest daughter who was less than 1 year old, was firmly strapped to a sash on Slash's back. Then, she checked all the weapons she had and knocked an arrow in her bow. Now you'd better weave your spells before the door exploded, signaling that before had just expired. Chapter 11:02 Dumb Genius Part 2. You two bring the children to the woods. We'll cover for you. Celia released the arrow just to watch it being deflected by the nearest undead's enchanted protection, while more of Knight's soldiers ripped out the windows from the outside. Celia cursed her useless bow, regretting for the first time in her life to have never learned magic. Her hunting knife was enchanted, but with her speed, she had no chance to beat even a skeleton in close-quarters combat. You've heard her, Ron. Naurin's eyes blazed with black and white mana as the enemies swarmed the house. Slash and Crash would have gladly obeyed if only they could find an opening in the undead's formation. They had even put Lilia and Laren on their backs, but unless something happened, running away would only put the children in pointless danger. Naurin pushed Celia on top of Crash while he helplessly watched their house being torn apart. As the walls crumbled and the first wave of enemies hit him, Naurin released the very spell that he had learned from Dawn during her fight against Lith, Daybreak. It was a mix of light, fire, and darkness magic that generated a wave of dark energy, followed by a volley of fiery constructs shaped like snakes. The darkness engulfed the room, sealing even the undead's mystical senses while the hard light constructs attacked from every side. The spell turned the Razar into a one-man army, while the light blooming from the shadows made him look like a rising sun. Each tendril of light moved akin to a new limb, coiling around his enemies and paralyzing them. The heat coursing through the constructs was so intense that the undead's regenerative abilities couldn't keep up with the damage fire magic caused, making it impossible for them to escape the construct's grip. The darkness spreading from the Razar destroyed their protections first, and then seeped inside their blood cores. One after another, the undead disappeared in a puff of smoke and the tendrils of light started to chase a new target. The magical beast decided that the chaos following the Tier 5 spell was something enough and ran towards the Tron Woods, hoping that the rampaging Razar behind them would keep anyone from noticing their escape. A few hundreds of meters above the ground, Night looked at the mess unfolding in front of her eyes, wondering how could her plan have gone so wrong. I spent weeks planning this attack, waiting for the moment when only small fries are around, and studying the Queen's core routine. Heck, I even disobeyed Mom and messed up with the council, yet this is all I got. She thought. The team she had sent to kill Rena had yet to report. Her sister Dawn seemed to have infiltrated her ranks to sabotage the mission, and the complexity of the arrays protecting Litha's home was beyond her wildest expectation. What kind of madman puts so much effort into protecting a frigging cottage, and what the heck is that array? Uriel's hexagram spread its blue light above the house, thwarting Knight's plans over and over again. Right after completing the several arrays necessary to seal air magic in the area surrounding the Verhen household, and to keep the noise from the attack to draw unwanted attention, Knight had cast one of her personal Tier 5 darkness spells. Shadow Maelstrom was supposed to put the house's barriers to the test, if not even bring them down in one fell swoop. Yet it had been absorbed by Uriel's hexagram before it could deal so much as a scratch. Then, she had unleashed another powerful spell, Seismic Blast. It was a mix of fire and earth magic that should have damaged the defensive array's focus point and breached through the barrier, but the hexagram had absorbed it as well. I have no clue how that thing can eat my best spells as if they are candies, but I don't like it. After every spell, not only did the array's light grow stronger instead of weakening, but also the points of the star lit up one after another. Now only 2 of them are off, and I really don't want to know what happens when all 6 points are charged. Damn it, the attack was supposed to be the undead version of the Famar mines, with me killing everyone without leaving a trace nor witness, but it's taking forever. Her fight with Balkier and Dyrus's attempt on Floria's life had given her an idea. The human stupidity had already given birth to a monster like the god of death. All she had to do was to replay those events, pin the blame on Dyrus, and then lure Lith in her fold before he could get over the grief on his own. She had made sure that, if interrogated, the people she had sent after Camilla would lead Lith back to Uriel's father. With his known deals with the Dusk Court, the Archmage was the perfect scapegoat. As for Lith's family, her plan had been to kill them all swiftly, before anyone noticed, recreating the scenario that had given birth to the Blood Magus and destroying Lith's faith in those who he considered his trusted allies. Her plan would allow Knight to humiliate the council, weaken the kingdom, and erase the humiliation of the horsemen's defeat at the hands of the abominations at the same time. Her sources in the council had reported Knight how Xenogrosh cared for her little brother, making the horsemen eager to kill the dragon abomination while wearing Lith's face. On top of that, Knight wanted to put to the test Baba Yaga's theory about hybrids, and Lith was the perfect specimen. By the Red Mother, Knight cursed as a blast coming from Lith's house sent her crashing onto the ground. I get that taking down the array surrounding the Varen's house is hard since the Queen's core is barricaded inside. I can sort of understand that the Huntress is still alive thanks to arrays left by her husband. What really doesn't make any sense is how the heck the 3rd house is still standing. With each passing second, the risk of Knight's plan failing increased dramatically. She had underestimated the time and effort that both Lith and the royals had invested in defending the Verhen household, making its defenses so sturdy to resist even the combined efforts of her army. She couldn't afford to help the teams attacking Zinya's and Celia's house, because the 3 units of the Queen's Corps who had taken refuge inside not only blasted anything that came too close to the house, but they were also waiting for an opening to call for reinforcements. We don't know. A hapless undead she was lifting by the neck said. The Yeval household has no arrays nor mages, yet everyone we sent there died. Then send more. I can't waste any more time on fuck. Knight cursed at the light pillar coming from Celia's house. Just a second later, her swearing reached new heights. After hearing Abominus's howl, the other magical beasts patrolling the area had relayed the message and spread the alarm. What started as a single voice spread like wildfire until it reached the woods and turned into a chorus. Chapter 11:03 Mistakes and Failures Part 1. Knight had warned her agents that Lucia was called the Graveyard for a reason. A single mistake could spell death, and the light pillar marked the 5th mistake the undead had made in just a few minutes. Each still-standing house was a mistake, and things were about to get worse. Until that moment, the red eyes of the undead had been the only light visible for kilometers after Night had darkened the skies with her magic. Yet now the woods had come to life, and countless yellow eyes shone from the darkness of the tree, reflecting the light from the golden pillar. Zinya's house, a few minutes earlier. Night had patiently waited for the first opportunity when all the households were defenseless, leading the attack herself to make sure that everything went without a hitch. Yet no plan survived contact with the enemy. Dawn had followed Baba Yaga's instructions, never sharing with Night that Lith was already bonded to a cursed object. The Bright Day had also avoided mentioning the Razar's existence. assuming that either Lith had killed him or that Naurand had resumed chasing her in his foolish quest for revenge. On top of that, Knight couldn't have predicted that Knight Professor Zogar Vaster would be visiting the Yevel household. The recent series of events had destroyed the old professor's self-confidence, making Vaster think that the White Griffin didn't need him anymore and that it was time to retire. Lith becoming an Archmage was the only silver lining in a streak of unlucky years. First, Balkier had killed dozens of his precious students. Then Nalier had almost destroyed the White Griffin, causing Uriel's death and almost leading Quilla on the path of self-destruction. Every time one of his pupils needed him, Vaster failed them. Such thought had eaten at him from the inside until even his marriage fell apart. I'm really sorry for bothering you so often. It's late, so maybe I'd better go, Vaster said, yet his short legs refused to stand up from the chair. You never bother me, Professor Vaster. Lucia is a wonderful place, but it's quite lonely after sundown. Unless my neighbors visit, I spend my evenings alone while the kids play with their pets. Zinnia pointed at the huge magical beast curled up in front of the fireplace. Please, call me Zogar, or at least just Vaster. Her constant use of honorifics embarrassed him. I'll do it only if you stop calling me Miss Yevel. Zinnia chuckled while covering her children with a blanket. They had fallen asleep while hugging their fuzzy friends who in turn refused to leave the room until the stranger left. That would be inappropriate. I'm old enough to be your father. Vaster looked into the magical beast's big, round eyes and saw in them a reproach that actually came only from himself. And I'm old enough to hang out with whoever I want, Professor Vaster. Now, would you mind telling me what's weighing on your heart so much lately, or do you prefer more empty chatter? She said, It's about my students. Vaster sighed. It all started with those idiots following Dyrus destroying Floria's career, then the undead invaded our land. And now Quilla has quit the White Griffin. I'm tired of seeing fools destroying the lives of promising mages out of petty grudges. Tired of power-hungry buffoons waging a war after another just to fill their pockets. Tired of seeing good mages drift apart from the kingdom because we fail them in their hour of need. Vaster slammed his fist on the table, yet it didn't produce a single vibration nor a sound. The professor had managed to cancel the impact with first magic in the nick of time. People hurting people is how Moger spins. You have no fault in that. As for your students, did you play any part in their misfortunes, or did you do everything you could to help them? She asked. I did everything in my power, but in the end, it amounted to nothing. I might as well sit on my thumbs all day, and nothing would have changed. Vaster said with a deep sigh. You're dead wrong about that. If you feel so bad after doing your best, imagine how would you feel if you didn't even try. Failure is an integral part of life. It's painful sometimes, but in the long run it helps us to improve. Zinnia said, Please, if that was true, with all my failures I should have become so powerful that Manohar would be nothing compared to me. Yet it's the opposite. Vaster's rage gave him the strength to get up. I meant to improve as a person, not as a mage. Otherwise I should be a magus at this point. Zinnia never stopped giving him a warm smile and making him feel like a jerk. Vaster was born a noble and a powerful mage. After doing whatever he wanted for all his life, and even reaching the peak of his profession, he found complaining about the unfairness of life with someone like Zinnia beyond ridiculous. She had been blind from birth and her parents had treated Zinnia as a tool, forcing her to marry an awful man to ensure their own happiness. Vaster just felt powerless, whereas Zinnia had been powerless all her life and a prisoner in her own home. I'm really sorry for my tantrum. I'll take my leave now. Vaster attempted to cast a warp steps, but nothing happened. What the heck? The communication amulet in his breast pocket was silent, all the runes on its surface inactive. After failing to retrieve his equipment from his dimensional item, Vaster felt a cold shiver running down his spine. How many entrances does the house have? He asked while looking out the nearest window. Just the front door. Zinnia had never heard him with such a cold voice. For the first time since they had met, Vaster scared her. What about windows? Is there a wall thinner than the others? He couldn't see anything due to the clouds, which in his experience never bode well. This is a house, not a fortress. It has plenty of windows to let the sunlight in, and I've no idea about the walls. What's happening? Zinnia moved near her children, while Vaster chanted one spell after another. His hands moved so nimbly that he even managed to place potions on the table without disrupting his fingers tracing hand signs. The small professor started to hum with power as his body glowed from the energy burning within. He took a golden wand out of his pocket, moving it from the door to the windows non-stop. The energy inside him had become so powerful that it crackled, emitting from time to time small bursts that resembled bolts of lightning. Seconds stretched into minutes until a thick mist seeped from under the door, slithering on the floor like a living being. Vaster flicked his wand, and the mist turned into ashes. Then, the door was burst open, and so were the windows as unknown assailants entered the living room. Each one of them was taller than Lith and emitted such a powerful killing intent that Xenia had to bite her cheek to not faint. She sweated bullets, feeling her knees buckling from the pressure those things exerted. Yet she was determined to not abandon her children, and Vaster's calm gave her hope. Chapter 1104 Mistakes and Failures Part 2. Another flick of the wand unleashed his Tier 5 spell, Dark Dimension. Vaster's eyes turned black, and every speck of light disappeared from the room, making Xenia think that she had gone blind again. The darkness spread throughout the room, and when the undead tried to move forward, they discovered that the energy surrounding them was so thick that it was akin to moving through mud. A mud that seeped inside all of their orifices, flooding their bodies with darkness magic until nothing was left. To those staring at the scene from the outside, the lights inside the house had just flickered. Yet 5 elder undead had disappeared, whereas the humans still stood there as if nothing had happened. Vaster drank the potions he had left on the table while looking in the eyes of the flabbergasted undead who were staring at him from the broken windows. A beam of golden light cut the female undead short and her head off. A split second later, all those who had met Vaster's gaze joined her in death, their bodies burning under the effects of the golden wand he wielded. Zogar Vaster was more than a short, overweight mage. He was a royal forge master, a spellbreaker, and after the undead invasion had started, he had even joined the Queen's Corps again. The golden wand was the latest weapon developed by the joint efforts of the bulkier department, the Royal Forge Masters, and Manohar. The enchanted tool was capable of turning Tier 4 and 5 spells into the next best thing to sunlight. Each beam consumed a lot of mana and lasted for a split second, but the amount of light it produced could kill any undead if the beam hit a vital spot. Aside from the royal guards who aided Lith at hundreds of kilometers away, only a few selected individuals had one. The second wave of undead avoided Vaster's line of sight and broke through the walls. Thanks to their enhanced senses, they didn't need to see the human to pinpoint his position, and by moving in a straight line, they were certain of taking him by surprise. Vaster didn't even flinch while he activated his Tier 5 spell, Night Parasite. The dust and debris that covered the undead came to life as darkness magic filled them to the brim. Black sand filled their eyes and mouths while the rocks turned into small worms that dug through the flesh of their victim. The small worms didn't even try to pierce through the heavily enchanted armor the undead wore. The magical constructs simply became thinner until they could slip through the mesh. Xenia's house rumbled due to the attack, damaging some of the bearing walls, but it held. 10 elder undead had entered and died, so the leader sent 20 for the third wave and watched them die the moment they stepped inside the living room. "Fuck discretion, bring down the house," he yelled. Flaming stones the size of a car crashed inside the Yeval household before exploding. Streams of darkness magic made the walls crumble under their own weight, while earth magic produced a quake that turned the cozy cottage into a pile of rubble. "Someone reports Lady Knight that we're done with our task," the leader of the third squad said just a moment before his body turned into cinders. The debris fell to the ground, revealing a silvery sphere underneath. It shape-shifted back into a professor uniform from the White Griffin Academy, and Vaster wore it with pride despite the many injuries he had sustained. Behind him, Xenia, the children, and the beasts were unscathed thanks to Vaster taking the brunt of the damage while focusing his armor to protect them. To keep his focus and endure the pain, he had bitten his lower lip so hard to almost cut it off. Yet despite the dangling flesh and the cracked bones, he made no mistakes while weaving his next series of spells. Ignore the old fool and focus on the others. They are his weak point. The second in command said with a smug grin before Vaster blew his head off. "He's right." Xenia said while comforting her children during what she assumed were her last moments. I'm dead anyway, Zogar, whereas you are a powerful mage with powerful tools. Please, take my children and run away. Shut up. How could I call myself a mage if I can't even protect the happiness of a single person? Vaster's voice was firm, but his knees buckled up. At his age, mana abuse would quickly weaken his body. I never begged in my life, so excuse me if I suck at this, he said while looking the magical beasts in the eyes. Keep this stupid woman behind me and run away at the first opportunity you get. Are we clear? The beasts nodded, looking at him not with suspicion anymore, but with the respect and deference they would use for their alpha. That sight made Vaster regret to have always considered beasts as his inferiors. Even though his left eye was burst open, even though his lower lip was hanging by a thread, none of the undead dared to come close or speak. Vaster took off the cork of another body-enhancing tonic and gulped it down, uncaring for the poisoning that stacking the effects of so many potions caused. He had never been tall nor handsome, but his talent for magic was the real deal, and he had worked hard since a tender age while the rest of his peers fooled around. So, when he had become an archmage at 25 and everyone considered him the greatest healer of his century, it felt natural to him. It was simply the proper reward for all of his effort. Yet shortly after he had reached the peak, life had thrown him down. Marth first, and Manohar later made every one of his achievements look like child's play. Vaster, who had once been considered a candidate to the title of God of Healing, had become a joke before he could even notice. The same people who before begged to have just a minute of his time would ignore him in favor of his rivals. After years and countless failures at regaining his lost status, Vaster had resigned to his destiny as third best healer. To be judged for his physical appearance, and to every single one of his feats to be dwarfed by those of his more talented colleagues. All of that had changed after meeting Xenia. He was used to people being nice to him until they got what they wanted, yet even after regaining her sight, Xenia would always speak to him with the same kindness she had when she was blind. Even after meeting Lith, Marth, and several other healers, she still looked at him with the admiration she had when he was still the second best-looking man she had ever seen. When Xenia had asked Vaster to follow her recovery, he had gladly accepted. From that moment onward, she would often call him, not to ask for favors or talk about her rehabilitation, but to chat with him and make sure of his well-being. Helping Xenia to deal with the lawsuit against her in-laws for custody and then to manage her money made him happy like it didn't happen in years. Chapter 11, 5 Nights, Offer Part 1. After having failed to achieve the title of Best Healer of the Kingdom, to become the headmaster of the White Griffin, after having failed as a father and a husband, Zogar Vaster had finally found his first place. Someone he could make a difference for, someone who didn't treat him like a bag of fat and gold. By threatening Xenia, the undead threatened the only success he had left and the only person who didn't call him because they needed something or because Manohar and Marth weren't available. The undead unleashed one Tier 5 spell after another, exploiting Vaster's inability to use movement spells due to the erase and to dodge because of the innocence that he was trying to protect. Much to everyone's surprise, not only did he survive, but he also returned each one of the spells in kind. The other assault teams had to send reinforcements due to Vaster's death count quickly coming close to the 3 digits. Vaster's only remaining eye scoured the battlefield while he kept chanting with the aid of his armor to move his broken arms. Please, don't turn away, Xenia. My life might be nothing but a streak of unremarkable failures, but I want someone to at least witness how I died. After all the terrible things I've done in my life, for both my country and for myself, give me the opportunity to be remembered for the one thing I did right. Vaster thought, regretting that the use of magic kept him from entrusting his last message to her. What the heck is that guy? He's taken enough spells to level a mountain, yet he's still standing and our marks are still alive. The fourth in command said to the new leader, You idiot, that's no man. That's a mage laying his life on the line. Keep underestimating him and you'll die like the others. Don't assume that just because he's on his last leg a mage is easy prey. Give it your all, the leader said. She shape-shifted into her Grendel form, wielding a blade bigger than a man and raising its hilt at her eye level in a sign of salute from a warrior to another. Vaster trembling hand raised his own short sword, returning the salute right before Sucker punching the Grendel with his golden wand and turning her into dust. How dare she think about honor after they used an army to attack a family of civilians? Vaster gritted his teeth and prepared for a new assault. A raging sun exploded right under his feet, turning the rubble into molten stone and charred wood. The pungent smell and the heat hindered the undead's heightened senses, forcing them to check for survivors in person. Good gods, what is this thing? An undead said, while witnessing a silvery blanket shrink back into a suit of armor and revealing that most of the people it had protected were still alive. Whatever it is, it's mine. The new leader couldn't hear Vaster breathe, and there was blood coming out of his ears, mouth, and his empty eye socket. The guy is dead and his armor is ready to be imprinted. The undead leader ignored the sobbing of the woman and her children, focusing on the priceless artifact at hand. Don't worry, pal. I will not repeat your same mistakes. If you didn't waste your armor to protect that sow, you would still be. Vaster's hand moved like a snake, grabbing the undead's leg and unleashing a Tier 3 darkness spell. Something so weak and slow would have never killed an elder undead if not for being released on contact and manipulated with surgical precision. A diagnostic spell allowed Vaster to find the ghoul's heart and focus the spell's full force on it. He's still alive. The warning of the surviving undead made his allies unleash the spells they had at the ready on the fallen professor until they had no more left. Everyone was so focused on the apparently immortal man that the encirclement broke, allowing the magical beasts to run away towards the woods. Not having to protect others anymore, the armor wrapped around Vaster's body, repelling the spells as if they were just spring rain. Its full form didn't resemble a griffin like a royal armor, nor a dragon like Lithus. The silvery armor looked exactly like Zogar Vaster did during his heyday, like a man full of confidence and pride. It was the most terrifying thing the undead had ever seen. It was all he managed to say as he reached the nearest undead in a single step. I won't let you touch them. Between the armor and the potions, Vaster moved as fast as a bullet and shattered his own leg in the process. His body couldn't endure such high-speed, powerful movements anymore, but his spirit refused to die. I'm not done yet. His short sword pierced the undead and unleashed the spells it held, killing him on the spot. Vaster's arm was nothing more than splinters puncturing his flesh, but the armor kept following his orders, chasing down the undead who were now running for their lives, and killing one of them with each swing of his blade. Lith opened a warp steps after another while looking at his communication amulet and hoping for good news. Come on, light at least one rune. I can't be in several places at the same time. I can't abandon Rena, but even though my house is much more protected, it's also much more isolated. What the heck is Naurin doing? He thought, unaware that the Razar was still fighting for his life. Tista said she would take care of Rena, and without Solus, I'm not at my full strength. I'll have to trust my sister and go home to pick up Solus before assessing the situation. After preparing all my life for a moment like this, I can only hope it was enough. Ever since Lith had joined the academy, every time the Royals or Marchioness Distar had offered him rewards, Lith had always asked for two things: materials for his research and strengthening the protection of his house. Over the years, the combined efforts of Lith, the Queen, and her corps had made the Verhen household the next best thing to a small fortress. It was the reason why even Night had failed to break in and slaughter everyone. Yet Lith lacked the means to do the same for the others, forcing him to improvise. Rena's house. The room started to spin, and suddenly there was blood everywhere. Brago the Ghoul had no idea what was happening until Mogr became dark. Who the heck are you? Sinton asked while watching the undead's head spin in mid-air before it turned into ashes. A blond man wielding a glaive had rushed inside the room, holding their daughter Lyria in his free arm. The blond man was 1.9 meters, 6 feet 3 inches, tall, with yellow eyes and thick sideburns that reached his chin. He wore a green hunter suit apparently made of leather that stuck to his skin, revealing the bulging muscles underneath. My name's Reaper, and this is the Harvester. Another swing of the glaive cut Koro the vampire asunder while his movements were still impeded by his healing spine. Sorry for the delay, but I had to deal with the air sealing array first. Chapter 1106 Nights Offer Part 2. The darkness imbued within the Harvester hurt the undead, but wasn't enough to kill him before he could call for reinforcements. Are you insane? Sintin retrieved Lyria while Rena covered herself and picked the triplets between her arms. Why did you let him do that? My mother and my father live here as well, whereas there's only one of you. How do you plan to protect all of us? All part of the plan. Reaper guffawed as he retrieved Abominus with spirit magic and healed his wounds. What's a king without his court? He tapped the ground with the harvester, opening several warp steps that let the SHYFS of his pack enter the house and hide in strategical spots. This is no longer their trap, but our own. Yet there is no safe place on the battlefield, so we'll move your family to the woods. Another dimensional corridor opened, bringing the humans to the safety of Lifebringer's tribe that was waiting for them. Reapers silently looked at the undead bursting from the windows and the doors of the house, uncaring to hide their presence anymore. The mission was all that mattered to them. The King of the Woods couldn't agree more with them. As long as he kept the undead unaware of Rena's escape, the enemy would split their forces and waste manpower in a fool's errand. Only once everyone was in their place did the slaughter begin. Lith sighed in relief seeing Rena's rune become available again, yet his good mood didn't last long. His last warp steps had failed, and so did that he had attempted to open a bit farther from his home, forcing Lith to fly to his destination to not waste more mana. Those bastards sure did a thorough job. Even Dad's fields are covered by an array. The realization made him turn into his hybrid form so that when air magic failed him, his wings kept him from crashing on the ground. Thank the gods you're here. I need you to pick me up, Solus said through their mind link from the ground. Lith swooped down and collected the inconspicuous stone that was Solus's disguise. Without air magic, she couldn't either use the amulet to communicate or fly to reach him. The moment she slipped on his finger, Solus used their mind fusion to share with him all that she had learned from the tower's mirror hall while waiting for his arrival. The scenario she showed him went beyond his worst expectations. He had thought that the assault had been Dyrus's way to get even with Lith for ruining his plans in the Famar mines. But a human archmage had no way to recruit so many undead troops. In the images Solus had collected before perceiving Litha's arrival, Zinya's home had crumbled and Celia's was seconds away from being razed. Only Litha's house was still standing. Yet Uriel's hexagram had already absorbed 4 powerful Tier 5 spells, so its protection was as good as gone. Your family is safe thanks to the men of the Queen's Corps taking refuge inside your house and keeping the undead from messing with its defensive arrays, but until we don't get rid of the air sealing formation, they can't call for reinforcements. Solus said. Lith nodded and took the black eye of Trouble the Baylor out of his pocket dimension in a blaze of emerald flames. Unlike normal dimensional items, an Omni Pocket could ignore the effects of a dimensional sealing array if its master knew how. Lith started to weave a spell that he had hoped to never use while using Invigoration to recover the strength that he had lost after opening so many warp steps. When he reached Lush's outskirts, an appalling scene appeared in front of his eyes. Only a crater was left where once Zinya's house was, and no life force could be perceived. Celia's house was standing only thanks to Naurin's light mastery, but judging from the enemies swarming around the place and the Razar's dwindling strength, he didn't have much time left. To make matters worse, a figure donned in black prevented him to move any further. This isn't how I pictured our first meeting, but it will have to do, Night said while flying thanks to the wings of her black crystal armor resembling her lost adamant equipment. She had taken the body of a young girl barely past 15, about 1.65 meters, 5 feet 5 inches, tall, with blonde hair and brown eyes. There was nothing remarkable in Night's host except the madness in her eyes and her feverish voice. Lith ignored her ramblings and unleashed one of the final sunsets stored inside his Tier 5 magic, holding ring against the unknown madwoman. Night didn't even attempt to dodge the black flames that hit her with their full force, and yet didn't left so much as a scratch on her body. Was that domination? Lith asked, realizing that he couldn't afford to underestimate his enemy, no matter how dire his family's situation was. No, she simply used her darkness magic to stop yours and resisted the flames. Beware, though, she used no spell, just fusion magic. Solus had a hard time believing her own words and estimating the enemy's strength. Are you kidding me? This woman is weak ass. Lith could see with life vision that his opponent had barely a yellow core and the prowess of a woman who had barely started training for a few months. Mana Sense agrees with your estimates, but that's what happened nonetheless. Solus said. Lith tried to kill the woman with war, but she dodged his attacks with the minimum necessary movement. Knight had the highest host turnover rate among her siblings, so she was used to fight using a weakling. I wanted you to see a bloodbath, maybe even a few heads on a pike. Yet this should work as well. Knight giggled like a little girl talking to her first crush while she danced around the angry blade. After all, you can't get past me, and even if you somehow managed to do it, you would have me at your back and my army in front of you. Many have already died, and more will fall if you keep struggling. Surrender and accept to become my host. If you do, I promise that your family will be saved and that I'll not hurt you during our first night. Knight's words and her black crystal armor allowed Lith to figure her identity. Are you the Black Knight? Lith stopped fighting only to give Solus the time to verify his suspicions. Nailed it in one, my dear husband. Knight shape-shifted into her real body, discarding her host's appearance. She now looked like a young woman in her mid-20s, about 1.70 meters, 5 feet 7 inches, tall, with ebony skin that seemed to devour all light and full lips that highlighted her sensual smile. She had silver waist-long hair and round eyes without pupils that shone like moons. Her body was covered by a skin-tight black suit of crystal armor that left only her head exposed, yet she was no less charming than if she was wearing a cocktail dress. I have bad news and I have worse news. Solus said. The bad news is that you were right. We're against Dawn's little sister, and we both failed to sense her real powers because her host hid her. The worst news is that despite her host is way weaker than Akala, for some reason Knight is even stronger than Dawn. Chapter 1107 Demons of the Fallen Part 1. My guess is that Knight's strength depends on the lack of sunlight. Just like Dawn feeds upon the light element, Knight is likely to feed upon darkness. Solus thought. And just like Dawn's undead were immune to sunlight, Knight seems to be immune to darkness magic. Lith completed the phrase for her. I'm much better than any woman you'll ever meet. My knowledge surpasses that of any creature you met, and with me, you'll experience intimacy as no one else can offer you. We'll become one in mind and body, as the lovers you heard about in legends. Knight once again attempted her pitch. Been there, done that. Lith cut her short and pointed his finger at the woods. Now get out of my hair, because once my armies get rid of yours, once the air-sealing arrays are gone, I'll kick your ass with all the might of the kingdom at my side. What army? Knight turned around, noticing the 4 tribes of magical beasts coming out of the Tron woods and exposing her back to Lith, who didn't miss the opportunity to backstab her. War pierced through armor and flesh until its hilt struck the black crystals, yet the horsemen seemed to barely notice the inconvenience. Do you really call that bunch of fleabags an army? Magical beasts can barely put up a fight against the undead. Knight chalked on her words as war's enchantments attacked her from the inside, ravaging both her flesh and mana core. Orion didn't lie when he said that those struck by his masterpiece wouldn't live long. Unlike a normal weapon, war had the ability to twist energy on contact, making it possible to turn the very body of its victims against themselves. The counterflow ability allowed the blade to infect with its own energy signature any means that a powerful creature might employ to mend their wounds and use them as a weapon. The Black Knights tried to fly back and escape the angry blade's bite, but Lith charged forward, making it impossible for her to pull war out. I said armies. Plural. Lith threw Solus's stone gauntlet onto the ground while it held both the Black Eye of Trouble the Baylor and the only Tier 5 necromancy spell Lith had ever created, Demons of the Fallen. Neither the undead nor the beasts cared for the small crater the impact created, at least until the ground below their feet started to shake. Just like she had failed to take into account Lith's meticulous defenses of his home, Knight had also overlooked that while Lucia was known as the Graveyard, Lith's home was known as the Death's Door. Over the years, many people had tried to harm his family, and all of them had failed. Most of the time, the Verhens didn't even notice the members of the Queen's Corps or the magical beasts killing the intruders from the shadows. Lith's relatives were also unaware that he had left precise instruction to turn the flesh of the assailants into first-class fertilizer and to bury their bones nearby the house, with earth magic, leaving no trace of the deed. The ground split, and only the hush arrays surrounding the area kept the inhuman screams of a few hundreds of skeletons that rose from their grave from breaking the silence of the night. The horsemen scoffed at the sight of the lowest species of lesser undead, and so did her soldiers. At least until black streaks spread over the dirty ivory of the skeletons, and an emerald glow replaced the red light of undeath in their eyes. The black eye of a Baylor had the ability to draw and focus the darkness element to the point of turning a lesser undead into a greater if applied to a single corpse. Lith had no use for someone with free will who might refuse his orders, whereas lesser undead were blindly loyal. Demons of the Fallen used the black eye as a focus to conjure an endless stream of darkness element while splitting the energy between all the skeletons to keep them from achieving sentience. The eye amplified the effect of the necromantic spell, allowing the black mana not only to form blood cores, but also to flood the bones with darkness element and turn them into deadly weapons. The skeletons attacked recklessly, strong of the innate resistance to most elements that they shared with their enemies. Their touch was akin to a Tier 3 darkness spell, making physical contact torture for night soldiers. Spells did little to no harm to the demons of the Fallen, while physical damage was quickly repaired by the constant flow of necromantic energy. The elder undead had already their hands full facing the beasts, and the arrival of reinforcements only made things worse. Unfortunately for them, the worst had yet to come. Once the skeletons' bones turned pitch black, their shadows rose from the ground, acquiring a third dimension. They had white holes where the mouth and the eyes were supposed to be, while their faces were twisted in a grimace of wrath. Instead of attacking their owners like demons of the darkness would, the shadows wrapped around the black skeletons, replacing their lost flesh and clothes. The demons didn't look like the skeletons' original owners so much as people from all the Garland continent. Some looked like farmers. Others had their appearance resemble a full armor. A few were barbarians wearing nothing but clothes made from animal fur. All of them stared at the enemy with undying rage. The white of the shadow's eyes mixed with the green light of the undead, giving the demons emerald irises and white pupils. Both burned so brightly that the newborn army painted the fields nearby the Verhen household an eerie green. Night had no idea what was going on and no time to analyze the situation with her mystical senses. War's bite kept ravaging her body, and Lith gave her no quarter, leaving the control over demons of the Fallen to Solus while he focused solely on the horsemen. The undead on the ground didn't fare any better. With the beast armed with darkness-infused weapons attacking from the front and the shadow army attacking their back, Night's servants had been caught in a pincer maneuver. Don't falter. The shadow's range is just their arm length, and the beasts can only use elements that do us little damage. Take the shadows down with your weapons and the beasts with long-range spells. Voya the Banshee said. She was supposed to become one of Night's chosen once the battle ended. The horsemen had yet to replace those killed by Balkier and Manohar, because sharing her strength with new chosen would weaken her. Night's host was barely more than human, so she had preferred to keep as much power as she could to herself. Voya's command was simple, but there were no rookies among those who had taken part in the assault. Her words allowed them to recover from the surprise, and the centuries of battle experience did the rest. They split into two fronts, fighting back to leave no weak spot in the formation. Both sides of Night's troops cast a volley of spells against their respective enemy to slow their advance and thin their numbers. Chapter 1108 Demons of the Fallen Part 2. The beasts dodged or blocked them with earth magic, while the demons didn't budge and took the spells head-on. The shadow that comprised their body neutralized the darkness element, whereas everything else simply went through them as if they were just illusions. The moment the demons charged at the undead's front lines, the green of their eyes moved to their hands, shape-shifting them into the weapons that the souls possessing the skeletons were more familiar with. Be them a great axe or a kitchen knife, the emerald weapons took the undead by surprise, allowing the demons to push the enemy's blades away long enough to break through their ranks and made their formation crumble. Demons of the Fallen wasn't just a Tier 5 darkness spell, it also mixed spirit magic to call upon the shadows that always followed Lith and to bestow upon them weapons. The conjured blades were weak and brittle, lasting one single exchange before shattering. Yet together with the element of surprise, they gave the demons the opportunity they needed. Demons of the Fallen not only required to accumulate a huge amount of darkness magic and to feed it to the black eye of the Baylor to be amplified, but it also required the caster to focus solely on its creations. Solus couldn't conjure the necessary energy due to her inability to use invigoration on her own, and Lith couldn't afford to control so many creatures at once to keep them from consuming in a few bursts the spirit magic that comprised their bodies. Together, however, they had no such problem. Lith took care of the main enemy, while Solus focused on their army and protected the eye. Without it, demons of the Fallen would crumble. Only the might behind the black eye could provide the steady flow of darkness magic necessary for the skeletons to be more than a pile of bones and to protect them from darkness magic. Enough! Night slashed at her own midriff with a knife hand, cutting her body asunder. With her other hand, she took a black prism out of her core, shaping it like her prized spear, thorn, and lunged at Lith's heart. The two combined moves allowed her to escape from War's assault and forced Lith away. "Now I understand how you beat my sister, but I'm different from her," Night said while crystal tendrils rescued and reattached her lower body. "I have almost no chosen left, and without the sun, the entirety of Mogar is my playground." Unluckily for Lith, her analysis was spot on. Even though Night's host was weaker than Akala, even though she had lost the Black Rose armor and the Thorn Spear to Balkir's chaos magic, her strength still outmatched Dawn. Now that the horseman had stopped goofing around, Lith found himself forced on the defense. Without Solus, he had to strategize alone. He couldn't follow the mana flow in Night's body to predict what spell she would use, and the skill gap between them only made things worse. Faluel outmatched Lith. Yet even from their brief exchange, he could see that Night would probably give the Hydra a run for her money. The spear had the range advantage, and each lunge would produce a pillar of darkness bigger than Lith's body, forcing him to perform ample movements to dodge each strike and miss all the openings that Night left open to taunt him. On top of that, the black pillars wouldn't just fade away. After missing their target, the energy mass stopped in midair, forming a massive sphere that just waited for Night's next command. "Fuck me sideways. She can use spirit magic as well, and way better than I do. Night's darkness magic is as fast as a bullet, and she's leaving her spells around to strike at me from behind. If not for full guard, I would have already lost." Lith thought. Cease this pointless struggle and surrender. Otherwise, with a flick of Night's wrist, several of the black spheres darted toward Lith, attacking him from every side. He stopped flapping his wings and used spirit magic to speed up his fall, escaping from the encirclement in the nick of time. His 4 eyes burned with the mana of 4 different elements as he unleashed the Tier 5 version of Checkmate spears. Ice lances as thick as trees with emerald streaks all over appeared around Night, each one striking at her with the strength of a speeding car. She recalled the black spheres to herself, but the solid matter mixed with spirit magic resisted darkness magic's effects. The kinetic energy the spears carried made them move fast and hit hard enough to crack the horseman's crystal armor, taking away big chunks of her flesh with each hit. At the same time, Lith charged at Night, while using War's World mirror ability to channel all the stray energy from the horseman's spells and his own in a vertical slash that split her asunder. Smart and resourceful. I think I'm in love. Her two-halves spoke as nothing had happened, and her left arm lunged with Thorn from point-blank range, giving Lith no time to dodge. The black pillar that originated from the spear had the destructive power of a Tier 4 darkness spell, the kinetic energy of a meteor, and the piercing power of Thorn. It turned Lith into a black shooting star that crashed onto the ground, opening a crater several meters deep. "No matter how much you damage my meat suit, dear husband, fixing it takes me little effort. I don't care for my host's pain, and her life is meaningless to me. The only way you have to beat me is to make me run out of mana faster than you do. Alas, the night is my element, and I'm not going to give you a single breath for free." The horseman kept her word and resumed her attack, while Lith had yet to get up. Small bursts of red flames that were the equivalent of blood for his hybrid form came out of his eyes, mouth, and ears. He had managed to remain conscious only thanks to the combined protection of War's World mirror ability, his boosted skinwalker armor, and a last-ditch hard-light construct. Together, they had taken the brunt of the damage and kept Lith's heart from being punctured. His knees wobbled, but Lith still managed to dodge Thorn and to get as much distance as he could from Knight. Hang on. I already gave the demons the order to take down the air sealing array first, but the undead are protecting the focal points of the formation with all their might. Solus knew that between the lack of air and dimensional magic, the horseman had a tremendous advantage over Lith. He had barely a decade of battle experience, whereas Knight had spent centuries, if not millennia, wreaking havoc and fighting the most powerful creatures on Mogar. Without dimensional magic, Lith couldn't use most of his tricks, and he had no way to win a contest of strength against one of the most powerful relics in existence. Also, flying using only his wings wasn't easy since he had them for barely less than 2 years, and he spent most of his time in human form. I'm trying everything I can, but I don't think I can stall Knight for long. Lith replied, even with a bright blue core, I'm no match for her in a one-on-one fight. I've only got 2 aces up my sleeve left, so wish me luck. Chapter 1109 Uriel's Legacy Part 1. Lith darted in the air, thanking his latest breakthrough for the second set of wings. Despite the fact that they were nigh atrophied, they still gave him a bit more speed and enhanced his flight stability. I love when they play hard to get. Knight chuckled as she lunged with her spear and emitted another black burst of energy. Her laughter died when a light pillar struck her from above, making her plunge several meters underground. The light element carried so much heat that her black crystal armor turned red, and enough kinetic energy to give her the impression of having been swatted by a giant. Lith had yet to become a light master, but he had learned how to cast up to Tier 3 offensive light magic spells and how to mix them with fire and spirit magic. Are you a one-trick pony, or what? Because unless your ramblings count as an attack, you're boring me. Lith's banter would have been much more effective if he didn't run away. Knight laughed while regrowing her hair and repairing her skin. Do you want me to stop going easy on you? I'm fine with it. The horseman unleashed her Tier 5 spell, Ice Coffin. Suddenly, a swarm of black crystal daggers filled the air, each one of them enveloped in a frost aura so cold that it started to snow. It wasn't their razor-sharp edge nor the darkness energy they carried to make them lethal so much as their ability to stick to their target. Dodging them all was impossible, and once one of the daggers hit, the frost aura would fuse the ice crystal to its victim's flesh. The cold would suck away the heat just like the darkness imbued within ate at the life force, leaving the target of the spell no way out. Not even Lith's bright blue origin flames could fully defend him from the swarm. For each dagger he vaporized, 2 more would form from both the steam and the water condensed due to the spell's frost aura. Ice Coffin needed but a few seconds to paint the skinwalker armor black, turning Lith's flight into freefall as life abandoned his frozen limbs. Thanks for the lesson, sucker. I'll do my best to learn this spell, Lith said, leaving Knight with her mouth agape. She could see with life vision that, for no apparent reason, the ice daggers had left his body, allowing Lith to recover with invigoration the strength he had lost. The horseman focused on her spell, discovering that somehow the water element had been drained from Ice Coffin. Without its key component, the spell had faded away. After Balkier, now even Lith can use domination? Knight couldn't believe that both the husband she had chosen could be so alike. It doesn't make sense. He has no streaks in his hair, and even if he has a black-colored eye, he failed to dominate any of my attacks so far. Why should the blue eye be any different? She thought while unleashing her Tier 5 spell, Stardust. A wave of light magic infused with darkness flooded the sky, moving toward Lith's house like a tsunami. That way, even if he dodged, the spell would still hit the defensive formations of the house and weaken them further. Only when the light element disappeared and Stardust fell apart did Knight remember why she had avoided using big spells until that moment. Oh shit, she said when she noticed that now 5 out of 6 points of Uriel's hexagram now burned with power, leaving only 1 missing. Thank you so much. Lith flew above his house, outside the range of the air sealing array. He called upon his best Tier 5 air spell, Mjolnir. A bolt of lightning as strong as a natural one descended from the skies and hit Lith's house for no apparent reason. Yet this time the horseman didn't let Lith's nonsense fool her. Mjolnir had disappeared just like starlight, lighting the missing point of the blue hexagram that surrounded the Verhen household and activating its full effect. This doesn't bode well, Knight thought. Now I understand why Lith taunted me to use powerful spells, and why did he run away? He was trying to use my own mana to fuel that knockoff Silverwing's hexagram. The only question is, what the heck does that thing do? What the heck does that thing do? Captain Locrius, the man in charge of one of the 5-man units of the Queen's Corps tasked with protecting the Verhens, asked. After the undead's initial assault, all 3 teams had sought the protection of the array system after rescuing their respective marks. Between the arrays and the arsenal that each member of the Queen's Corps carried with themselves, Locrius had managed to keep the house safe until Litha's arrival. After the arrival of the magical beasts and the demons of the fallen, the captain had focused on helping his allies to stall as long as he could until Martianus Distar sent reinforcements. It's a very powerful weapon. Alina tried and failed to remember how Uriel's hexagram worked. Lith had explained it to her many times, yet Alina had never needed to employ any of the house's defense systems. She knew how to activate the array, but she had forgotten what it did. She knew that the hexagram could stop up to 6 different elemental spells, and that was the reason why she had used it to block Knight's most powerful attacks, leaving the rest to the array system and the soldiers of the Queen's Corps. I get that, he grunted. I'm just asking why you don't unleash it and why Faluel's apprentice attacked it. So far, that thing helped us against Knight, and your son is supposed to be under the Hydra's protection. We won't resist long if you hold your punches, or if that wormling turns traitor. How dare you? Raz's anger almost scared the captain. That's not a thing, that's a person. A person who's risking his life to protect us. Hearing such disrespectful words towards his son while watching Lith engaged in a deadly battle was more than Raz could handle. I didn't mean to offend anyone. It's just that beasts look and sound all the same to me. I had no idea that he's a male. Captain Locrius's words only added fuel to Raz's rage fire, forcing Alina to intervene. Hold tight, this might hurt, she said while wielding the seemingly common wooden spoon that actually hid an orichalcum core and enough mana crystals to control all the arrays around the house. What do you mean it might hurt? The soldiers asked in unison. Alina couldn't remember for her life if the hexagram would attack a single target or an area of effect. Yet she had seen Lith completing the formation after luring Knight near the house. She focused on the horseman and ordered Uriel's hexagram to attack her. The array followed Alina's will and shape-shifted into the Tier 5 Warden spell, Immortal Fetters. A swarm of chains of blue energy struck at Knight, who countered them by creating a thick barrier of darkness magic. The power behind the chains, however, belonged to 6 Tier 5 spells that the array had woven in the form of high-density energy. Chapter 11:10 Uriel's Legacy Part 2. Darkness needed time to corrode such a construct, whereas Immortal Fetters needed only a second to unleash its effects. The chains seeped inside the horseman's body, ignoring the crystal armor and weighing her down with the power of a Tier 5 gravity spell. At the same time, the 6 elements stored inside the chains flooded Knight's body, creating a mana flow opposite to her own and making it impossible for her to use magic. What the heck is this? The horseman plunged to the ground as her wings were no longer capable of sustaining her weight. Her armor now felt as heavy as a mountain, and moving her spear required her full strength. Her superior battle experience had become useless since even performing a feint required a swiftness of movement she no longer had. Instead of answering, Lith took a full breath and unleashed a jet stream of bright blue origin flames at Knight. He couldn't use them before since origin flames required close range, and they didn't move faster than he could hurl them. On top of that, every failed attack with origin flames would leave Lith breathless and create a perfect opening for a long-range weapon like Thorn. Now, however, Knight couldn't dodge, and her spear moved so slowly that Lith could follow its movements. The horseman channeled the darkness magic that flowed through her real body, the black crystal embedded in her host's chest, to conjure another thick barrier. Immortal Fetters slowed and lessened the energy flow, but it was still enough to block most of the flames. Remarkable, truly remarkable. Achieving a bright blue core at such a young age is a rare feat. Knight felt no pain and focused solely on conjuring as much power as she could to get rid of the pesky chains. Immortal Fetters had the power of 6 Tier 5 offensive spells, and one true magic array, but a horseman's mana core could do much more. On top of that, Uriel's hexagram couldn't absorb any more spells to recharge the chains, whereas new darkness element fueled Knight's abilities by the second. It was only a matter of time before the fetters lost the tug of war against the living corruption that the Black Knight was. Lith hurled one stream of origin flames after the other, but between the crystal armor and the black aura, they inflicted little damage. Then, he used war to decapitate the horseman, just to see a crystal tendril reattach the still mocking head. Has anyone ever told you that to destroy a cursed object it takes the power of a guardian, and that the horsemen are above any living legacy that any race can make? Knight laughed at his efforts and lunged her thorn in a cross-counter. She had no need to defend. No matter the damage, as long as her crystal remained intact, Knight would always return whole. Lith cursed his bad luck as thorn pierced through his left shoulder and wing, turning them both into shreds. With finesse off the table, the horseman had no problem turning the battle into a slugfest. She didn't even try to dodge, preferring to collect her strength for the moment when Lith put his weight into the strike and then hitting him back while was pierced her flesh. Such a suicidal tactic would have been impossible for someone without an almost immortal body, something that Lith had never faced, whereas Knight had spent centuries exploiting. "What's the matter, Dragon Boy? Are we not feeling so hot anymore?" the horseman said with a cruel grin on her face. While Lith used invigoration to recuperate, she managed to stand up. Thorn remained at her side while Knight focused on amplifying the effect of the darkness magic coursing through her body to get rid of immortal fetters. Solace analysis. Lith hated to admit it, but Faluel was right. That fight had made it clear how codependent they were from each other. Against opponents beyond their level, Solus needed his power and shrewdness as much as Lith needed her ingenuity and tactical expertise. Things aren't going well on my side either. Our enemies are elder undead, not small fries. They know the importance of the array to stop our reinforcements and are giving their lives to protect the seal. As for Knight, there is no mana geyser we can draw power from, nor does she have a weak point that we can exploit. Yet there is a way. Stop aiming for her host and focus on her crystal core. She can endlessly regenerate her host, but her power core can be overloaded or damaged. Dawn had to run away when our combined origin flames cracked her crystal. Solus said, "What do you think I've been trying to do until now?" She moves the damn crystal, and because she has the same energy signature of her host, I can't pinpoint it. Lith replied, "Well, here's my plan," Solus explained. She needed to say just a few words before Lith could follow her reasoning and connect the dots. He took a deep breath of invigoration, using the energy to supercharge the last final sunset stored inside his magic holding ring. Darkness magic again. Has the damage to your brain made you forget who you're fighting against, or are you just clutching at straws? Knight said as she used a powerful stream of darkness element to counter the raging river of black flames that was burning the grass and charring the ground around her. Once again, the horseman's ability to conjure massive amounts of darkness element made her immune to one of the undead's innate weaknesses and protected her from the Tier 5 spell as if it was just a spring breeze. To do that despite immortal fetters, however, the Black Knight had to stop eroding the chains and focus solely on her barrier. She saw Lith taking another deep breath and strengthened the darkness shroud even more in anticipation of the second wave. "Do what you want. I can do this all night." War pierced the barrier's core, using its world mirror ability to scatter the darkness and cutting her short. Knight cursed as the black flames melted the nearby stones and finally reached her armor, damaging more than just her host. Yet she needed a single swing of thorn to push the angry blade away and renew her protection, just like Lith wanted. Even someone as skilled as Nye would create an opening while carrying out a serious attack, so Lith exploited her move to counter with war, piercing Knight's chest exactly where her crystal core was hidden. As Solus had said, the crystal core had the ability to conjure and harness the protective darkness magic, not the host. That meant that Lith just had to force Knight to use so much energy that he would be able to follow its flow back to the source. Knight shivered in pain due to War's bite and struck back, but Lith had already stepped back. She failed to understand his strategy until Lith used the deep breath not for invigoration, but to hurl a jet stream of origin flames along the path opened by War. a path clear from flesh and crystal armor, leading straight to the exposed living legacy that was Knight's real body. The shiver turned into an agonizing scream as the origin flames attacked the enchantments that gave her life. Chapter 11:11 Blood for Blood Part 1. Any damage Knight's crystal sustained couldn't be healed just by spawning prisms, nor by absorbing darkness element. Only time could fix the horseman. On top of that, every small injury on Knight's real body weakened both her physical and magical abilities. Nice trick, but I won't fall for it a second time. Let's see which one lasts longer, if your crippled life force or the daughter of Baba Yaga. Knight said with a crazed laughter. Has anyone ever told you that your puny flames lack the kick of the real deal? Knight tried to move her crystal core behind the protection of her flesh and armor while Lith hurled another stream of bright blue fire. It hurt her a lot, but it was far from killing her. Damn it, she's right. I might win in the long run, but I don't know if my life force can endure using origin flames so many times. My breath is that of a wormling, not of a dragon, he thought. The pillar of violet origin flames the size of a skyscraper that struck Knight, instead, was the real deal. The stream of fire the horseman with the strength of a collapsing mountain and threw her in the air as if she was just a rag doll. How dare you attacking our family? Xenogracia's roar made Lith's house tremble despite all the arrays protecting it. The shadow dragon landed with the grace of a ballerina and the fury of a storm. She stood over 30 meters, 100 feet, tall, with her mouth brimming with fire and her 4 eyes lit by chaos magic. Thanks for freeing me, you moron. Knight laughed at Xenogracia's blunder. Unlike Lith, her flames had enveloped her whole body and destroyed immortal fetters. I don't fear a single dragon. I've got a set of carpets and curtains made from skinning you oversized lizards. Your presence does nothing but give me the ingredients I need to reforge my weapons. How dare you inflicting us pain? Kigan, the blood wind of the desert, dismounted from the dragon's back and turned into a black phoenix so big that his wingspan covered the starry sky. He unleashed a stream of violet origin flames that intercepted Xenogracia's and hit the horseman who was still trapped inside the first pillar of fire. The moment the 2 streams of origin flames met, they turned white and lit the night like a small sun. The 2 beasts had mastered origin flames to the point that they could make the conflicting energies merge rather than collide, creating a combined attack that the abominations called primordial flames. I fought a guardian in the past. A couple of hybrids are not oh shit. Knight cursed her big mouth as several people jumped off the dragon's back, each one shape-shifting to a size similar to Xenogracia's. How dare you make us bleed? A male figure turned into a 28 meters, 92 feet, long Leviathan who conjured a tidal wave of chaos and water magic that destroyed Knight's host and decimated her army at the same time. Lith, Solus, and every single sane person who witnessed the fury of the abominations felt a mix of awe and fear running through their bodies. The powerful mana flow coursing through Lith's body protected him just like the arrays shielded his family, but the aura the hybrids emitted was so powerful that many in Lucia fainted for no apparent reason, while others experienced life-scarring nightmares. How dare you taking what's ours? A female figure turned into a griffin, who unleashed all the life maelstrom stored inside her body at once, making the skies scream with thunder and the ground tremble with a quake. Death is not enough to pay for your crimes, but it'll have to do. A man turned into a Garuda, a gigantic feathered humanoid with 2 sets of wings on its back, the head of a black eagle and talons instead of feet. A second burst of life maelstrom met the first as a female Fenrir appeared as well, joining the attack. Bytra wasn't with them simply because she was busy erecting a barrier around the entirety of Lucia to protect it from the effects of the fury of her companions. What the heck? Lith and Solus couldn't believe their own eyes. Under any other circumstance, they would have wondered why so many creatures had assembled just to help him or what reason could drive them to such fury. Xenogracia had already shown them how much she cared for her relatives, but the other abominations were no dragons. Yet their anger matched Xenogracia's, and so did their power. Their combined might was more than enough to kill Knight. Lith could see the black crystal cracking as life maelstrom turned the spells empowering the living legacy against herself. The silver lightning struck from the inside, while origin flames and spells damaged the horseman from the outside, covering her surface with cracks. The shockwaves of the attacks had killed every single undead and destroyed the ceiling arrays. The beasts and the houses survived only thanks to the silver barriers enveloping them. Enough! A voice more ancient than the night itself resounded as a white barrier shielded the collapsing crystal and warped it to safety. The fury of the 6 colossal beasts had been so stunning that no one had noticed the small hut running across the battlefield on what looked like 10 meters, 33 feet, long chicken legs. You've really outdone yourself this time, child. Baba Yaga's voice was cold, but the kindness with which she rocked the dying horseman between her arms was akin to that of a mother with her sick newborn. Unhand our prey, blood mother, or we'll make sure that your name on a gravestone will be the only thing left of you. Xenogrosh said as 7 black pillars appeared from the sky, setting up for the chaos array their combined presence conjured. Are you really sure this is what you want? I'm aware of the Master's plan, of how they focused on restoring the powers of the direct bloodline of the Guardians to match their respective parents if needed. On reviving the 4th ruler of the Flames to provide you with weapons and armor that dwarf those of most Guardians in the case, they try to interfere with your ascension. A clever plan indeed. Yet I see that many of you still wield outdated crap and your power is far from that of a real Guardian. Baba Yaga said. So what? There are 7 of us and 1 of you. We prepared to fight our parents, and you are nothing compared to my old man. Sire the Fenrir said. I'm Baba Yaga, child, and I'm standing inside my mage tower. Solus could see that unlike her, Baba Yaga's hut was capable of moving and absorbing the surrounding world energy even in absence of a mana geyser. It provided her with much less strength than the crystal mine, but it was better than nothing. Moreover, the phenomenon made it harder to conjure the world energy, weakening all breathing techniques, origin flames, and slowing down the recharge of the life maelstrom. I admit that I can't take you all by myself, but if I go all out and put my life on the line, I'm confident I can kill 2, if not 3 of you before attempting to escape. Worst case scenario, I'll die after having your numbers. Chapter 11-12 Blood for Blood Part 2. Best case scenario, I'll survive after crippling your strength. Can your plan survive such losses? Can you give up on your companions' lives just for this? After all, no one died. I made sure of it. No harm, no foul. Before answering, remember that you have gained your new bodies for a little more than a year, whereas I mastered my skills before most of you were even born. Baba Yaga said. Xenogrosh and the others pondered her words, yet never stopped weaving their best spells nor building their power. She's right. We grow stronger by the day, learning ways to combine our respective innate skills that probably the Guardians themselves ignore due to their past grievances. Each one of us is a member of our family and an unreplaceable asset. She thought. Apologies are not enough. Kigan the Phoenix said. Your daughter messed with our family, and we can't just sit idly until she does it again. This isn't just about insignificant things like turf or money. This is about blood. His body turned into a living mass of black and violet flames as the abomination put his life on the line with the next attack. What if I promise you that she'll never do it again? Baba Yaga said. What good is your word when Night defied your orders countless times in the past? Ikos the Garuda said. We can trust you, not her. Well said. Baba Yaga activated creation magic, dismantling Night's crystal core while keeping her alive and fixing her at the same time. This spell that you all can read will prevent her from attacking the Verhen household again. Mom, please no. Night had no tears, but she cried nonetheless. She could feel the spell removing part of her free will, making her less than a person and more like a thing. You brought this upon yourself, child. Back when I fought Salark for you, I exploited the fact that, despite her great power, she is just one person and has many things to attend. There was only so much time she could waste on me. This time not only did you go against my will, but you also angered 7 beings who have surrounded us and are willing to die. This is a small price for survival. Baba Yaga said. It's not enough. Xenogrosh said. She could ask her siblings to attack in her stead or find a loophole in your spell by striking at the people nearby. No matter how strict a command is, there's always a catch. Baba Yaga looked around, noticing that the abominations protected more than Litha's house. Celia's house had been restored, the beasts healed, and even the village of Lucia had been enveloped in a silvery barrier. I fail to understand the reason for your generosity. But what about I change the spell so that night will become unable to harm directly or indirectly anyone who resides in Lucia? I can also promise you to order my other horsemen to do the same. They are not like night. They never went against my will and always respect my orders. On top of that, know that in the case any of them breaks my oath and attacks this place, I will not intervene again. You have my word. Baba Yaga said. It's not enough. We demand blood for blood. Nothing less is acceptable. Husher the Leviathan said. What more do you want then? Baba Yaga had weaved her best spells, but she could feel the chaos array empowering the abominations and weakening her. She wasn't afraid of death so much as of abandoning all the children that still needed her. Yet she couldn't let Night die without at least trying everything she could. If the abomination dared to take her daughter away from her, she would make them pay. She never learned because you never punished her. Husher was among the oldest among the 7 hybrids and knew Night very well. Kill the horseman's host while they are still bonded and make her experience our pain. That and the restricting spell will be enough to sate our anger. This time we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. The next time you mess with our family, which there will be no talking, only fighting. I couldn't agree more. Baba Yaga changed the slave spell on Night's core, turning Lucia and all of its inhabitants into something beyond the horseman's reach even in her dreams. The Black Knight screamed and cried as part of her was forever changed. The pain of her maimed free will, however, was nothing compared to the physical agony that the death of Night's host caused to her. She could feel the agony of every single cell, and for the first time in her life, Night experienced the suffering of the living without the protection of darkness fusion. By the time Baba Yaga was done, the physical damage the crystal had sustained dwarfed in comparison with the mental scar that the punishment left on the horseman's mind. Baba Yaga returned inside her hut to repair the crystal and then warped away, soon followed by the abominations. Solus, what the heck did just happen? What's this plan Baba Yaga talked about, and how can the 4th ruler of the flames be still alive? Lith dispelled demons of the fallen and retrieved the stone gauntlet. He couldn't shapeshift back into human form in front of the members of the Queen's Corps. I have no clue. We are missing a lot of pieces of the puzzle, like the identity of the 4th ruler or what the Master can do with the Abomination Guardians hybrids. Before answering any of that, we must check on the others. She pointed at the crater where once Zinya's house was. Lith stared at the still smoking rubble while fearing the worst. The death of his neighbors would be more than collateral damage. It would be the proof of how little he cared about protecting Camilla's family and mark the end of their relationship. Free country of Lamerth, beyond the eastern borders of the Gorgon Empire, in the headquarters of the Master. A few minutes later, I have good news and better news. Teska the Warg Abomination hybrid said. The good news is that I'm finally getting accustomed to my body enough to be once again a dimensional mage worthy of his title. The better news is that we have a new member of our family. Do you remember Nandi, the Eldritch Minotaur I told you about? Not only has he decided to join our ranks, but thanks to his orc half, he can also solve all our mana crystal-related problems. We don't have to look around for an orc shaman nor care about how they manipulate crystals anymore. Nandi is a living mana geyser that can provide us with all the answers we need. I don't give a damn about crystals. Today you all failed me with your foolish actions. You've jeopardized decades of hard work. And for what? Pride? Justice? Honor? The Master said while squeezing what looked like a black tennis ball. I know that you're angry, but I'm not angry, I'm livid. How could you be so stupid to go against Baba Yaga when none of you still has their equipment? When aside from Xenogrash, everyone else has yet to fully integrate their monster side with their abomination half. The Master roared. Chapter 11:13 A Mage Among Gods Part 1. The Master couldn't believe that beings millennia old could also be so stupid that they would face Baba Yaga with outdated artifacts. Unfortunately, adamant was rare, and to equip a single creature the size of any of the Guardian's bloodlines required tons of enchanted metal. After Xenogrash purified adamant to its utmost limit with origin flames, its quality increased tenfold, yet its mass decreased by the same amount. The Master couldn't afford to go into battle with the Guardians without giving the abominations the best money could offer. Davros was so rare that even eldritch abominations older than the Guardians had just accumulated a few ingots. Enough for a man, but barely enough to cover one of Xenogrosh's talons after she shape-shifted. The Master had given up on finding enough Davros to make equipment and relied on the black market for a regular supply of adamant of. The Gorgons living in Legane's lair produced the priceless metals simply by breathing on grass, making it inexhaustible. The Guardian would put batches of adamant on the market from time to time to allow powerful forge masters to put their abilities to the test and improve their skills, but this is a story for another day. You're being unfair. Xenogrosh stepped forward to protect Tezca from the Master's fury. We did it only for you. Lith is not only my little brother, he's also precious for your plans. On top of that, his family was under attack and… Nice try, but I don't believe you. The Master had the hologram of Litha's hybrid form Fighting Knight appear in the middle of the room. The organization had the resources to get their hands on Captain Locrius's report the moment he submitted it. An unknown necromancy spell, an army of magical beasts, origin flames, and even an array powerful enough to make a horseman bend the knee. Berhin didn't need your help. He would have found the path to victory on his own. He always does. The Master replayed the images in a loop, sighing with admiration and envy. Nandi did his best to read the room, but both his instincts and sharp mind failed to make sense of the events unfolding in front of his eyes. No matter what appearance the monster abomination hybrids took, they were titans, whereas the Master was just a human. No matter how powerful the Master's mana core was, or how tall they were, in front of immortal beings that descended from the Guardians, anyone else looked like an ant, something that should stay quiet and pray to not get stomped. The Master, instead, acted like a disgruntled father reprimanding his unruly children, and the abominations couldn't even look them in the eyes. Maybe spending too much time alone drove me mad, and Baba Yaga suppressed it while I lived with her, because this doesn't make sense. Nandi thought. I'll play along for a bit longer before taking my leave. Nandi, the Master's voice snapped him out of his reverie. Are you sure of your decision? From what I understand, you bear the mark of Baba Yaga's firstborns, and my organization doesn't get along with her. I can't afford to waste time and resources on an unreliable ally. I need to know where your allegiance truly lies before admitting you among our ranks. Answer me, and answer me honestly. Would you be able to treat the witch as an enemy if you were to meet her on the battlefield, or does your past relationship cloud your judgment? I don't know how you know about the mark, but my personal business is my own. Whatever I decide to do is only up to Nandi attempted to say. Kneel. A single word from the Master was enough to bring the powerful Minotaur to his knees, needing sheer willpower just to keep his head from hitting the ground. How stupid do you think I am? A wave of the Master's hand made Nandi feel like his body was on fire. I created the process that gave birth to you monster abomination hybrids. I knew your body better than anyone else the moment I laid my eyes on you. Baba Yaga may have given you her blessing after merging your two halves, but she did a poor job. How does the Master know what happened, and how can Baba Yaga's work be considered sloppy? Nandi could feel both his black and monster cores going into disarray, causing him unspeakable pain, yet his curiosity burned stronger. You are not the first returner we got here. A clone who bested his original and took their identity. I've devised arrays to defend this place from the likes of you, and spells that allow me to identify those who knock at my door. The Master said, I give you my word that I won't kill you, no matter your answer, but I need to know, where does your allegiance truly lie? What do you expect me to say? I barely know you and your plans, whereas I lived with Baba Yaga for months, sharing her bread and teachings. Of course I won't fight her without a good reason. Nandi said amid grunts as he tried to break free of the Master's control. However, if what Tezca told me about you, and if what even Baba Yaga told me is true, I'll gladly join your side. If the two of you clash, the best I can promise you is to assist neither, but only if you plan on helping me and not just exploiting me. Sounds fair. A snap of the Master's finger deactivated the arrays, allowing Nandi to stand up. That's it. Do you really believe me? The Minotaur blurted out, unable to repress his surprise. A creature as powerful as you has no need to lie. If you really wanted to harm me or escape, all you had to do was to manipulate the world energy in the room and stop my arrays. The Master said, surprising Nandi even more with his accurate understanding of the Minotaur's abilities despite the fact that they had just met. Of course, if you did that, the second set of arrays would have put you down for good. Welcome to the family, Nandi. Your role will be to make us a crystal mine and use your abilities to feed your siblings with world energy. You have no idea how much power it takes to fully develop your bodies. What you have is just the beginning. The Master activated 2 Tier 5 spells, Life Master and Master Scalpel. They were respectively the upgraded versions of the Scanner and Chisel spells. Together, they allowed the Master to stimulate Nandi's life force so that his 2 natures harmonized even more and his power rose to new heights. See, the witch's treatment wasn't bad for a newbie, but she failed to take into account that hurting your body mixed your life forces in a chaotic way. They don't have to just flow together. They must become one or you'll never reach perfection. I won't alter your life forces, but by studying them, I can devise methods that will allow you to tap into the best abilities of orcs and abominations without being hindered by their respective limits. The Master said, "Thanks, I'll get to work immediately." Nandi instinctively gave the Master a small bow. He didn't respect people for their race, only for their knowledge, and the Master had proved to have plenty. Chapter 11:14, A Mage Among Gods Part 2. No, before that, I have another task for you. Do you know what this is? The Master showed the black tennis ball to Nandi. No, but I can feel powerful chaos energy coming from it. The Minotaur said, "Correct. This is a mass of abomination tissues that I have collected from all of your siblings. Thanks to their knowledge and the mystical instruments Baitra made for me, I've altered its life force so that not it's identical to mine." The Master snapped his fingers, revealing 3 of his gene tanks derived from the blueprints of Arthan's madness hidden behind the wall on their back. Each one of them was big enough to comfortably accommodate an emperor beast and filled with a purple translucent liquid. The gene tank on the left was packed with rough-looking young humans. The one on the right was occupied by abominations, while the middle one was empty. This sphere is the best next thing to what would happen to my tissues if I turned into an abomination. I'm going to absorb it and then enter inside the gene tank. The nutrients bath will provide me with everything I need to survive the metamorphosis. The human scum will supply extra life force in the case something goes wrong, while my failed artificial abominations will sustain my other half. If things go as planned, I'll become the first human abomination hybrid. The Master said, "You can't be serious." Xenogrosh stepped forward. "There's a reason why we always delayed the procedure. Even with all of our precautions, the success rate is barely around 60%, and you have a single attempt. What if your body can't withstand the chaos energy? What if the living matter of the sphere takes over your mind and body? You would die and our decades-long plan would fail. First, with Nandi providing me with endless world energy, the abomination tissue should always be sated. Without the drive of its hunger, the tissue is nothing but a mindless being. Second, you should know better than anyone how skilled I am. I believe that if you and Nandi work together to keep me stable, the success rate will be 100%. Last but not least, I'm tired of waiting. Tired of seeing my human body unable to follow my mind's prowess. Even if I die, the creature that will emerge the tank will still retain my memory and knowledge. If you take your time to nurture it, you'll lose a father, but you'll gain a sibling." The Master always resorted to Xenogrosh's troll core to recover from the ghastliest of wounds. The limitless light energy it produced only needed her body to ingest food to produce endless vitality, making her healing spells almost as good as invigoration. "But Dad," Baitra tried and failed to speak, her eyes watery. "No buts. How could I call myself a mage if I can't even protect the happiness of a single person? I know that you did what you did to protect me. You endangered your lives because of my weakness, and for that, you have my eternal gratitude." Zogar Vaster, the 3rd greatest healer of the Griffin Kingdom, also known as the Master, brought the black sphere to his chest, letting it seep inside his body. "Thanks, Baitra. If not for your Dominator armor, I would be already dead. Thanks, Xenogrosh. If not for your healing magic, it would have taken me days to recover instead of seconds. Kigan, Sire, Husher, Ikos, Nelia. Thanks for your teachings that made me into a better man and mage than I'd have ever been on my own. You may be all older than me, but you've lost sight of what living really is for so long that I had to teach you how to walk, eat, and even use a bathroom. It might sound silly of me, but I've always considered you as my children. Whatever happens to this body, take good care of yourself. Professor Vaster entered the gene tank only when he could no longer stand the agony of the chaos energy eating at his body. He had never planned on growing fond of Zinnia, nor to put his life on the line along with decades of hard work just to save her life and her children's. Yet in front of the undead, Vaster had found himself incapable of running away. After losing his seat as the best healer of the kingdom, after losing the love of his wife and children due to his attempts to best his competition that kept him away from home, Vaster had given up on life for the ideal of helping mankind to reach the next evolutionary step. However, he couldn't love an ideal. An ideal couldn't smile at him and make him feel appreciated. While facing death, Vaster had discovered what really mattered to him. He was still ready to die, but only because he couldn't stand his empty life anymore. Zogar Vaster felt the purple fluid flooding his body, yet allowing him to breathe as the fight to determine whether the man or the abomination would prevail ravaged his body. Erna's household, a few hours before the undead attack. After hearing Lith speak about making good memories with Camilla, and after Naurand had dumped all girls in the group to ask Brina out, Quilla Ernas decided that it was time to get back into the game. As the Razar had so impolitely reminded her, she had a suitor who had been waiting the last few months for her call. On the one hand, it flattered her. On the other hand, she was afraid of making the date happen. Before taking a decision that she might regret, Quilla had summoned her closest friends to the war room, which just meant bringing her sisters inside her private quarters after activating all the necessary arrays to keep parents and house staff from overhearing her plans. I never dated anyone outside the academy, so I'm at loss for ideas. Floria, you dated in the army. I could use your advice about what I can talk about with an ex-ranger and first-class weirdo. Freya, your lifelong streak of one-night stands should provide me with plenty of material about how to end the date without Morok making a scene. Let's start with something simple. Where can I bring him for dinner? Quilla said. Wow, do you really think that's what our love life amounts to? Floria said. Am I just an encyclopedia of how to handle weirdos? And is Freya the empress of shallow relationships to you? Well, you dated a human-beast abomination hybrid who's also an awakened and who shares his body with a pretty woman. I don't see anyone getting weirder than that. Quilla shrugged. Also, between Calion and your exes, you can point me exactly at what not look for in a man. As for Freya, I've seen loaves of bread last longer than her relationships. Floria and Freya gritted their teeth, but they didn't attempt to deny anything. No matter how heavy Quilla's words were, they were also true. If he spent too much time as a ranger, then a fancy restaurant is off the table. Morok has probably little manners and no taste for gourmet food. You can't go to a tavern either. It would make you more like drinking buddies than two people dating. Floria said. Chapter 11:15 The Healer and the Beast Part 1. My suggestion is a cozy family restaurant. A place with a nice ambience and good food where Morok's weirdness will still stick out like a sore thumb, but will not get you kicked out. Floria said. Excellent idea. Which establishment do you recommend me? Quilla asked. In case you forgot, I've only recently got dismissed from the army. I only know several canteens and the fancy restaurants where my past dates brought me to. I never dated people outside our social status, except for Lith too many complications. Floria shrugged. Freya, tell me you've got good news for me. Quilla said. The weather is nice and the temperature warm. Together with the full moon, it should make the evening perfect for a date. Freya pointed at the clear sky. Not that. I want you to recommend me a place, or at least how to get out of it with class if things go badly. Quilla slapped her forehead in frustration. Sorry, but except during my time as assistant professor at the academy, I always picked up men in taverns. Easy to find, easy to dump. It's amazing what loneliness can make you do after you drink enough liquid courage. Freya said. From my experience in breakups, just be straightforward. Tell him that he's not the person you're looking for as a partner and that it's better to remain friends. Most men don't understand subtler signals and sometimes, to accept rejection, they need to get their asses kicked, so wear a nice dress and bring a weapon along. Out of desperation, Quilla called Tista, who suggested to her a few restaurants in the Distar Marquiate. They are all nice establishments where I dined with my colleagues after I graduated from the academy. Lith was far away enough that men would muster enough courage to ask me out, but his name still instilled enough fear to ward off idiots. Tista said, "By the way, I'm honestly surprised by your bravery. My brother told me awful things about Morok, and he's actually an emperor beast. Are you sure to have considered all the possible implications? Good gods, I just want a date, not babies. Besides, he was a human just until a few years ago, and if you spend a bit of time with him, you'll notice that Morok isn't much more insufferable than most guys who asked me out." Quilla said, "Are you sure? I mean, the Griffin Kingdom is full of nice guys with no beast blood in their veins. You could have anyone." Tista said, "My money could have anyone." Quilla scoffed, "But maybe you are right, and finding a nice guy is easy. Why don't you ask your boyfriend to introduce me to some of his friends?" "You know that I don't have a boyfriend." Tista blushed in embarrassment. "My point exactly. Thank you for your priceless advice about how to stay single." Quilla hung up the call and arranged her date with Morok at the gluttonous Scorpicore, named after the ex-lord of the Forest of the White Griffin. Scarlet the Scorpicore enjoyed its cuisine so much that thanks to her repeated visits and the amount of food she consumed each time, the owners had earned enough money to turn a small diner into a proper restaurant. Even after her departure, the establishment was still famous for its jovial ambience and large portions. They had no problems serving emperor beasts in their original form, so a shape-shifted creature like Morok was bound to go unnoticed. Hopefully. Quilla decided to wear a red blouse to emphasize her light pink skin, a silver necklace to draw attention to her slender neck, comfortable pants for a quick escape, and bloodbind, the twin adamant chains Orion had crafted for her, just to be safe. Morok was pleasantly surprised by her lovely attire, just like she was from seeing him dressed like a normal person for the first time since they had met. His long black hair with 4 streaks of different colors was clean and held in a ponytail. His beard was kept short and well-groomed, giving him a mature look. He wore a light overcoat over a white shirt and brown linen pants. The only odd thing in his looks was his eyes, one red and the other blue. "Looking good," Quilla said, trying to break the ice. Morok was afraid to speak and say something inappropriate while Quilla felt more awkward by the second. "Thanks, but it's all thanks to Adjutor the Drake, my new mentor. He beats the crap out of me on a regular basis, often for reasons I suspect are completely unrelated with my apprenticeship, but at least he knows how to dress." Morok said, "By the way, you look." He took a brief pause to look at his own right hand where he had written all the words to avoid, while the left contained a list of things that they could talk about. "Stunning. The combination of red and silver sure draws attention to your neck." "Thanks. Now let's get inside before we lose our reservation." Quilla walked through the door first, bracing for impact. The gluttonous Scorpicore looked much better than she expected, making Quilla inwardly thank Tista for her suggestion. The inner walls, the furniture, and the floor were all made of solid wood. The interior was comprised of 2 rooms, both with square small tables with 2 chairs each, distanced enough to allow the clients to have enough space to guarantee their privacy. Only natural fires lit the place, giving it a feeling that to commoners would remind them of home, whereas to Quilla reminded solely of her missions on the field. Since she had become 12 years old and had enrolled in the White Griffin Academy, the fire had become something she used only in her spells. In a way, the lack of magical lights helped her to relax. The date felt akin to an exploration mission of uncharted territory to her, so the fire set the mood right. Everything from the restaurant to the man in front of her felt alien. "I didn't expect it would take you months to set our date. Did Faluel really give you so little free time, or are you here only because you lost a bet?" Morok noticed how tense Quilla was, and tried to crack a stupid joke that unfortunately wasn't too far from the truth. No free time and no bets involved. Quilla blushed a little, mistaking the joke for Morok's usual bluntness. "What can I offer you tonight?" A nice-looking waiter in his middle 30s saved her from the embarrassment. He wore a simple white shirt, black pants, and a brown waistcoat. "I don't know, man. I'm new here, so I'd start with a menu." Morok didn't like being interrupted, even less having to trust a stranger's taste about his food. "I can suggest you." "Menu, dude. One of those pieces of paper with stuff written all over that are usually on the house. Do you want me to draw you a picture?" The waiter raised his hands in apology and handed them 2 menus before walking away. "That was rude," Quilla said. "Yeah, I know. The guy is free to give me the food he wants as long as he's the one paying for it." Morok nodded, glad they were on the same page. Chapter 11:16, The Healer and the Beast Part 2. I was talking about you. That poor guy was just trying to do his job. Quilla sighed. Oh, that was all Morok managed to say. An awkward silence ensued until they ordered and received their food. It took Morok a few bites to collect himself and say, I'm curious about what led you to leave the academy and search the guidance of an emperor beast. I mean, your family is loaded, your father is a hotshot in the Knight's Guard, and the few times we spoke in Kulla, you always talked about your plans of becoming a professor. It wasn't an easy choice to take. Quilla felt flattered by the fact that he still remembered those bits of conversation after so many months, and together with the good food, it helped to break the glacier between them. I never wanted to become a soldier, a fighter, or to deal with danger on a daily basis. My only dream was to become an academic and to spend my days between teaching and magical research. The only problem with that is that bad things keep happening. First Balkier, and then Nailier scared me so much that it took me a long time just to muster the strength to get out of bed. She shuddered at the memory of Uriel's blood spattering everywhere after she had cut his throat. I hear you. I was no longer a student, but I had to face Balkier's army 3 years in a row, and I always came out alive by the skin of my teeth. Morok shuddered as well, inwardly thanking the Great Mother for Balkier's disappearance. 3 times. Quilla almost choked on her food from the surprise. Yeah, I joined the army at 16, and as a ranger, I was dispatched twice to protect the members of the royal family, and once to protect the students of the Black Griffin. I always fought on the front lines, and seeing so many people die changes you forever. No offense, but compared to Balkier's army, Kulla was nothing. Morok said, None taken, but I wouldn't call it nothing. Quilla replied, Sure, all the members of the expedition choose to go to Kulla, whereas Balkier's anniversary was akin to an inescapable divine punishment, but it was still terrible. Kulla has been my wake-up call. It helped me to understand that even though I had managed to get out of my bed, I never stopped running. The academy wasn't my new home so much as my fortress that kept danger away. I didn't stop training because I lacked time, but because I lacked the will to fight. Kulla and meeting Baba Yaga taught me that the only way to avoid danger is to live under a rock. Quilla said, That's not true. Just mind your own business and take a quiet job. Lots of people enjoyed peace for years, even when Balkier was still active. It's just a matter of the choices you make. Morok said, Yeah, the problem is that I'm not like those people. I was born an orphan and my adoptive family means the world to me. Mom is an archon. Dad is an official in the army, and no matter how much they deny it, my sisters are natural-born fighters. I try to do what you say, but it only made me feel isolated from their lives and incapable of helping them in time of need. Whenever their line of work put them in danger, I was more a burden than an asset. I gave up of my career in the academy because I'm tired of running away and always seeking the protection of others. The undead invasion is not going to disappear because I wish it so. Sooner or later, our enemies will knock at the door of my family, and this time, I'll be ready for them. Quilla stabbed the dumpling in her plate as if she had a vendetta against it. What about you? Weren't you supposed to retire from the army and start your own noble household? It's complicated. Morok sighed, taking a pause so long that Quilla was about to change the subject. When my mother discovered I was a hybrid and my old man an emperor beast, she kicked us both out of the house. I spent my youth traveling the kingdom with my father, a six-eyed asshole named Glemos who never taught me anything but magic. During that time, I wondered what I had done wrong for making Mom hate me. I couldn't understand why all the other kids had parents and a home while I only had the road. When I became 12, my father brought me to the Crystal Griffin Academy, and after I got admitted, he disappeared. Long story short, hearing all the marvelous stories of my classmates about their families made me want to become like them. Everything I did after graduating brought me closer to my goal. I joined the army, the association. I took the ranger job that no one else wanted and succeeded where no one else could. I thought that with enough merits, I could achieve everything I ever wanted. Money, respect, a place to call home, and in due time, a family. All I got with the title of Baron, instead, were a bunch of responsibilities, people who only wanted my money, and enough paperwork to bury a dragon. It took me months to set my pride aside and admit that I had wasted years of my life to chase the dream of a twice-abandoned child. That being a noble wasn't what I really wanted. Morok took a bite of his steak, adding a bit more green pepper sauce. Quilla could relate with him, even feel lucky in comparison. Even with all the bad things that had happened to her, after she had enrolled in the White Griffin Academy, she had never been alone. Yet, just like him, she had only recently discovered that the path she had chosen to walk would never bring her any happiness. Quilla had asked Faluel's guidance for the same reason she had accepted that date. Instead of taking the safe but unhappy route, she wanted to take some risks and understand what she truly wanted. What about Agitor, your mentor? How did the two of you meet? Quilla decided to move to a less depressing topic. Morok told her all about his 3 days bender with his usual honesty, making her laugh when he quoted his first conversation with the Drake after he had sobered Morok up with invigoration. "Good gods, you really are crazy," she said after listening to the part where Faluel had kicked his ass. Hilarity made her eyes water. Too often people mistake being nice with being good. Morok shrugged. "I've been alone for too long to care about being nice, but I'm a pretty decent guy." "Yeah, right. Say that to the waiter." "I thought that Emperor Beasts were pretty picky with their apprentices. Between your rough start and the fact that you don't even want to become an awakened, I'm surprised Agitor took you in," Quilla said. He was surprised as well when, after returning from the desolate corner of the blood desert Faluel warped me to, I asked for his help. "I'm still not interested in becoming an awakened, but just like you, I can't stand idle while the undead attack the only home I have ever had." Morok replied. Chapter 11, 17 Dos and Don'ts Part 1. I may not be part of the army anymore, but the kingdom is my birthplace and the magical beast community is the closest thing to a family I have. Agitor agreed to take me in after I offered to help him protect his turf. Between undead beasts preying on their kin and the undead who fail to infiltrate human cities to feed, awakened lords have their workload increased because humans do not care for what happens in the wilds as long as it doesn't threaten their lifestyle. Besides, I needed something to do while waiting for your call, Morok said, making her chuckle. At the second course, they started to chat about their respective apprenticeships, sharing stories about their hardships and successes. After years spent hiding her activities from mostly everyone she knew, Quilla had a good time speaking freely. Even at the academy, she rarely opened up to someone about her research. Laymen wouldn't understand a word of what she said, whereas competent mages would gladly steal her ideas. The field of magical research was very competitive, and even inside her own team, everyone only looked after themselves. To make matters worse, her talent often made others jealous. Male mages in her same field avoided Quilla like a plague while nobles only sought her to become magical bloodlines, and for the power that being close with the Erna's household would provide them. Morok was rude and often foul-mouthed, but he didn't seem to care about her being a better mage or even having a better mana core. His only reaction to learning she would probably achieve a violet core was to propose a toast. "Are you really okay with not being awakened? This way you'll be stuck with a blue core your whole life, whereas awakened can achieve a violet core and use spirit magic. It's pretty awesome if you ask me." Quilla felt tipsy for having drunk a bit too much. Morok was a heavyweight, and she had got carried away following his lead. If there's one thing I learned in my brief time as a feudal lord, is that with more power come a lot more responsibilities. I don't want to be forced to join the council, and being just a true mage is an excellent excuse to skip the spirit magic class, he said, making her laugh hard. "That wasn't even funny. You should really stop drinking." "I guess you're right," Quilla said after noticing that people were staring at her, and she couldn't care less. "I need a detoxify spell, but I'm having trouble focusing. Do you mind giving me a hand?" Getting rid of alcohol from the bloodstream required but a Tier 1 spell that Morok promptly administered. Its only side effect was the dire need for a bathroom to literally flush the wine out. While the sobered-up Quilla rushed to the lavatory, Morok used her absence to pay the bill in advance, giving the waiter both a generous tip and an apology. Like Master Agitor always says, even beasts act like humans when they live among them, whereas I act like neither a human nor a beast, just like a prick, he thought. Before leaving the gluttonous Scorpicore, Quilla had to drink an entire water jug to make up for the lost fluids. But aside from that, her mind was as sharp as ever. Once outside, Morok put his hands in his pockets so as to casually offer his arm to her, which she casually failed to notice while they walked towards the city's warp gate. "You know, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have ever thought that you were adopted." Morok said after checking the notes on his left hand. Why? Do I act as stuck-up as purebred noble? Quilla felt slightly annoyed at the idea of having become like those she hated the most. Not at all. I briefly met your parents in the past, and you remind me of them a lot. I always thought you had gotten your mother's looks and your father's talent. Morok said. Thanks, it means the world for me. The idea that she could pass for her beloved parents' child was the best compliment that Quilla could ever hope for, and made her puff her chest out with pride. In the past, to express how fitting she was to her bloodline, Morok would have said that he found Quilla almost as beautiful as Freya and as muscular as Floria. After Faluel's training, Quilla had gained a few kilos of pure muscles and become a couple of centimeters thicker in every direction, but not in a sexy way. How many times do I have to tell you? The Drake's voice still echoed inside Morok's head. If you use the mother as a benchmark, it sounds like a compliment. If you use the sister instead, it sounds like you wish you could bang the other woman. I'm not worthy of your teachings, Master Adjutor. Morok had even kneeled to the Drake after realizing how wise his mentor was in all truly important aspects of life. Adjutor had accepted to teach his pupil about the do's and don'ts of dating only because he was sick of Morok treating him like a wretched creature who knew nothing about women. The realization that such lessons had garnered him the tyrant's undying gratitude, whereas teaching Morok the secrets of true magic had left little to no impression, made the Drake wish someone would beat his disciple in the head until it started to work properly. By the way, what happens when you give back a fief? Did you lose your merits as it happens to those who failed to become lords? Quilla asked. In the Griffin Kingdom, when a mage asked for a noble title and its lands, they would be granted full authority over their chosen fief for a trial period while the previous lord of the region taught them the ropes. Being a genius in magic didn't mean to be also capable of ruling a piece of the country. The mage needed to study the kingdom's laws and to prove their ability as both politicians and administrators. To become the permanent ruler of their fief, the mage had to be at least as capable as the person they were going to replace. In case of failure, the mage would keep their title and be assigned a smaller territory to see if they could manage it on their own. I didn't fail, young miss, I backed out. Morok snorted. I got my merits back and exchanged them for the title of Great Mage. This way, I get all of the money and none of the hassle. Wait, are you really a great mage? Quilla's voice held so much incredulity and so little admiration that it managed to dent even Morok's thick skin. Yeah, this might sound odd to you, but risking your life for the kingdom on a daily basis for years is valued a lot more than sitting on your ass all day and wait for enlightenment like academics do. He took his deep green robe out of his dimensional amulet and shoved it in her face. I didn't mean to belittle your achievements. I can only imagine what you went through while you worked as a ranger in the wilds. It's just, Quilla didn't know how to express her feelings without sounding like a female Morok. Chapter 11, 18 Dos and Don'ts Part 2. It's just that it stings at your ladyship's pride that despite your unparalleled genius you are still a mage while Lith is already an archmage, and even I am a great mage. He said, taking those rude words out of her mind. Yes. No. Oh gods, am I so easy to read? She asked while looking at the deep green fabric with envy. Usually no, but the fact that you ignored my arm, and yet you are sticking to my robe like a tick, is a big tell. Morok had been trying for a while to retrieve his high uniform from Quilla's hands, but she refused to let it go. I'm so sorry, she said while he stored the clothes back. Sometimes I let my competitiveness get the better of me. No need to apologize. Since you find my robe so charming, next time I'll make sure to wear it. I like clingy women. He said. Next time? Don't get ahead of yourself, hotshot. Her communication amulet drew her attention, cutting Quilla short. Recognizing Orion's rune, she feared the worst had happened. Her father never called so late without a good reason. Thank the gods you're all right, Orion said the moment he saw her face. Now listen to me, because I'm in a rush. The undead attacked your mother's assistant, and Litha's house is likely to be under siege. We've lost all contacts with their detail. What? We need to. You need to return home as soon as you can. It's not safe out there. Orion cut her short. If this is Dyrus's revenge against Lith for messing with the attempt on Floria's life, then you might be his next target. Remember that Velan hates you the most. There's no telling what he might do. I'm going to Lucia with the royal guards. If I didn't drag him in our mess, Litha's family would have been safe. Get home now. Orion hung up the call while Morok opened a warp steps to the nearest gate. Awakened or not, all Emperor beasts could use true magic, and they didn't need chance nor hand signs to cast spells, whereas as long as she held her amulet, Quilla was a sitting duck. For the first time in her life, she realized how big was the gap between true and fake mages, making her wish someone could awaken her. Your father is right. With our fancy clothes instead of armor, we're an easy target. Morok shoved her to the safety of the local branch of the association, unaware that Quilla wore one of Orion's skinwalker armor. I'm going to see if my master can provide some help. Call me the moment you know something, and I'll do the same. He warped away before she could answer. That was a good move. Now I have an excuse to call her again and ask for a second date. Sure, the abrupt ending killed all my chances of a goodnight kiss, but I doubt I would have got it anyway. Man, going back to school is definitely making me smarter. He thought. That was a dick move. Quilla thought. Exploiting a crisis just to have an excuse to call me again. The only silver lining is that it kept him from asking for a goodnight kiss again. That would have been awkward. Village of Lusha, Verhin household, now. Despite his exhausted state, despite the many still open wounds on his body and the almost tangible strain that the repeated use of origin flames had put on his cracked life force, Litha's mind was blank. Discovering the truth about Knight's assassination attempt on everyone he loved, Xenogracia's arrival, and the consequences of the truce between Baba Yaga and the abomination hybrids were all big news. On top of that, each one of those events had so many possible implications to be mind-numbing. Yet Solus was right. There was no time to stop and think. They first had to make sure that everyone in the family was safe and sound. Lith retrieved the stone gauntlet and deactivated the black eye of the Baylor. Demon of the Fallen ceased as abruptly as it had manifested, making the spirits of the dead warriors fade away and the skeletons they had inhabited crumble. Even though Demons of the Fallen's power was undeniable, there was a reason why Lith had saved it only for times of emergency. Not only did it require an amount of darkness and spirit magic so great that it forced Lith to use invigoration while casting it, but the spell would also destroy the corpses it used as foci. Lith had followed Balkir's example, sacrificing his creation's lifespan in exchange for explosive power. To cast Demon of the Fallen again, he needed another batch of well-preserved skeletons. Lith took flight and used Solus's mana sense to perform a quick head count. His parents and little brother, Aaron, were safe inside the house along with 3 units of the Queen's Corps, one of which he had never seen before. I thought there were just 2 units. I guess the Royals assigned me a 3rd squad after I left the army. He thought. A quick flight allowed him to find Rena, Celia, Zinnia, and their respective families deep in the Tron woods. Lifebringer the Kirin, one of the kings of the woods, had remained behind to protect them while the other kings joined the fight. Tista was there as well, giving her all to treat Naurin's injuries. Lith had barely the time to make sure that everyone was present and accounted for when several golden warp gates opened along with even more violet gates right outside the area, where until a few seconds ago the air sealing array was. Royal guards swarmed out the golden light, while Emperor Beast, whose size rivaled with that of the abomination hybrids, came out the purple light, each one wearing enough adamant to build a house. Great. Too much and too late. I can't face the royal guards in my wormling form. I need to get out of here. Lith warped away, using healing magic to mend his wounds before returning to the scene with his human appearance. His exhaustion and the damages left on the skinwalker armor matched that of someone who had fought several undead to save his girlfriend and had warped his way there. Why the heck did it take you so long? Lith said with a snarl. He had no need to pretend to be angry and surprised, because that was exactly how he felt. We're sorry, Lith. The man who wore the insignia of a captain of the royal guards on his sleeves said. His helmet opened and disappeared, letting Orion earn his talk with his voice without the armor's distortion effect. Royal guards are always on standby, and we mobilized the second we received Camilla's distress call. But without coordinates for the exit point, it took a few trial and errors to find an unprotected location. We couldn't use steps because they are too mana expensive and too small. Using such means of transportation would have just offered the enemy an easy target. Orion said. Alas, we're late for the same reason and more. The creature in front of Lith said. It looked like an enormous red feline with a long mane coming out of its spine along with several long jagged bone spikes. Chapter 1119 The Calm After the Storm Part 1. Two long horns came out from the Crimson Emperor Beast's shoulders, protecting the sides of its head. The long tail allowed it to balance its weight, while the creature stood on its hind legs, while the violet feathered wings on its back looked too pretty for such a feral creature. Lith recognized Fila the behemoth's voice, the beast's representative in the council and leader of their faction. The kings of the woods signaled us the presence of the horsemen of the Black Knight, so we needed to assemble a force that could take on her and her siblings. Baba Yaga's children help each other in times of crisis, and we couldn't afford them to escape. Fila said, otherwise we would only achieve an empty victory and be forced to wait for their return. If we want to put an end to their threat, they must be destroyed or at least captured. Despite his anger, Lith couldn't refute the logic of both humans and beasts. Royal guards needed to swarm a place before the enemy could dispel their gates, whereas beasts could protect their arrays, but they needed first to assemble a force capable of matching that of the horsemen. Without Uriel's hexagram and my countless tricks, Night would have made a short work of me thanks to the dimensional sealing array. Even if the beasts charged blindly, Baba Yaga would have appeared anyway, and I doubt that anyone but the abominations could strike such a good deal from her. He thought, what in the god's name happened here? Orion asked while looking at the crater where once Zinya's house was, at the ruins of Celia's home, and at the ground surrounding the Verhen household that had been upturned by the demons rising from their graves. Indeed, we received the call but a few minutes ago. Fila said, a horseman's power is great, but not even them can bring this kind of destruction in so little time. At the wave of the hand of their respective commanders, Emperor beasts and royal guards spread out in search of enemies or survivors. Feeling reassured by the presence of such a mighty force, Captain Locrias of the Queen Corps came out of Litha's house and started to tell everyone about the events he had witnessed. The description of the mysterious wormlings and its army's battle prowess left Orion flabbergasted and made a smug expression appear on Fila's snout. When the captain reached the part where Alina had unleashed Uriel's hexagram, her surprise matched Orion's. When he told them about the 6 odd-looking emperor beasts that had beaten Night to a pulp and even forced Baba Yaga to bargain for her life, both Orion and Fila thought that Locrias had gone mad from the shock. Meeting a single member of a guardian's bloodline was a rare event, but 6 of them at the same time was something unheard of even in legends. Only the accurate description of Baba Yaga in her mother form and of her tower, along with Litha's family testimony, saved Locrias from a thorough medical examination. I still can't understand why those monster abomination hybrids helped me without asking nothing in return. Lith thought, I get that Xenagrosh considers me a member of her bloodline, but I doubt that her companions feel the same way about me. Yet their rage was as genuine as it was groundless. The hybrids kept talking about their pain, their blood, their family. No matter how tight the ties between them are, I refuse to believe that Xenagrosh considers me part of her family after briefly meeting me once. Lith thought, maybe they consider your family members to be abomination hybrids as well since you all share the same blood. Solus thought, you could be right, but I'm pretty sure everyone is safe and sound. Their words made no sense. Lith checked his communication amulet, sighing in relief as he noticed that no communication rune had disappeared. I'm really sorry, Scourge. Sentinel the Garmer, who had replaced Protector as leader of the repack, said. Her fur was covered in blood despite both her skinwalker armor and the use of invigoration. She still lacked a front leg and several fangs that even the breathing technique needed time to replace. We thought about opening a warping array to transport you here or summon reinforcements, but to open such a long-distance gate open would have required all the kings and kept them away from the battle. Even with the weapons you provided us with, we couldn't let our magical beasts brethren go to battle alone. The undead are too powerful for them, and the chances to rescue Rena's family would have been near zero. No need to apologize, Sentinel. Lith took lots of food out of his pocket dimension that the Emperor Beast wolfed down to accelerate her healing process. You did the right thing. Arriving here faster would have been pointless if my pack died for it. While the royal guards fixed the fields and the beasts took care of their injured, Lith reached Tista and the others in the woods to bring them home. Your little army came just in the nick of time. Naurin said, while still in his Rizar form. He had lost his left arm, and most of the scales on his back were either broken or missing. Despite Tista's best efforts, he had so many open wounds that his body looked like a bloody railroad map. There were too many undead, and every time they touched me, I could feel my life force abandoning me. Why is he still like that? Lith asked in surprise. An awakened's breathing technique was supposed to heal even such ghastly wounds in a matter of seconds. Because he's on the verge of dying. Healing his life-threatening wounds drained Naurin of nutrients. After I made sure that Reno was all right, keeping him stable and feeding him potions was the best I could do. Tista replied. His life force is compromised from the injuries he sustained, the darkness magic that the undead used, and the mana abuse for using too many spells. It's taking me everything I have just to keep his cores from breaking due to the built-up strain. I can't even allow Naurin to lose consciousness, or he might not wake up. Lith examined the Rizar with invigoration, noticing that Tista was right. Using light magic to accelerate the absorption of nutrients would further compromise Naurin's body. Without an external source, invigoration would break down his flesh and bones to heal him, resulting in death. To make matters worse, both Naurin's mana cores and life force were in critical conditions. I'm sorry to bother you, little brother, but have you seen Professor Vaster? Reno pulled his shoulder to get Litha's attention. Why the heck should I care about him? The professor is probably in the safety of the academy drinking wine, whereas Naurin here is dying. Lith snarled at his sister's tactlessness. You don't understand. The professor was here. How do you think Zinnia managed to survive? Rena's words struck Lith like a punch, giving him one more piece of the puzzle, but raising more questions than they answered. Zinnia is heartbroken and has never stopped crying. She thinks that he died to protect her, or that the undead took him prisoner. Chapter 11:20 The Calm After the Storm Part 2. Lith called Faluel to deal with Naurin while he contacted the missing professor and the academy. Headmaster Marth didn't like being bothered so late at night, but the moment he heard Litha's report he moved as fast as he could. You must thank Quilla the next time you see her, child. Faluel was back in her human form, using the spell Quilla had traded with her to inject potions and tonics straight into Naurin's bloodstream. Not even awakened can heal so many wounds at the same time. We're healers, not miracle workers. The Hydra used her breathing technique, Lifestream, to scan the Rizar's life force and remove the darkness magic poisoning it before stabilizing his condition. Just like a pseudo-core needed mana pathways, a mana core required life force to remain stable. Too many severe wounds would destabilize the life force of an individual, putting their mana core at risk. On top of that, massive doses of darkness magic did more than just inflicting physical wounds. If untreated, darkness magic would infect its victim's body and core alike. It was how Lith had unwillingly created a greater undead back at the academy, and how Protector's core had cracked during Balkir's attack. Faluel focused on cleansing the darkness plaguing her apprentice, and on closing all of his open wounds thanks to the constant stream of nutrients the potions provided him with. Stabilizing Naurin's life force allowed his 2 mana cores to recover as well, but only once he could safely fall asleep did Faluel sigh in relief. She kept injecting potions in his bloodstreams non-stop, while inwardly thanking both the wonders of alchemy and Quilla's ingenuity. Don't heal him any further until he gets some rest. Between the combat and the healing spells, his body can't endure any more mana, Faluel said before going back to take care of the other injured. She couldn't afford the council to discover that a member of the fabled War people lived next door to her. All races were still looking for a way to get access to the fringes, and very few would respect Naurin's privacy. Even the other elders of the Beast Council would spare no efforts to squeeze Naurin's secrets out of him. You bring me terrible news, Lith, Marth said while checking his missing colleague's whereabouts and last known position. Vaster is too old to face a threat the caliber of a horseman. Not even Minohar could, and he's much younger and madder. Lith informed the royal guards about the professor being MIA right after bringing Rena's and Zinya's families to his own home. Everyone was so pale that they seemed to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The only silver lining was that, thanks to the presence of the magical beasts, the children were calmer than their parents. Please, you have to save Zogar. Zinnia needed sheer willpower to not cry and keep her children calm. He was on his last leg when we ran away. You have no idea the monsters he faced alone only to protect us. If anything happens to him, it would all be my fault. Alina was still scared to death, but seeing her daughter and granddaughter safe allowed her to be the rock the others needed to survive that night. Don't worry, Zinnia. If Professor Vaster is still alive, Lith will find him. Alina pretended to pat her son's shoulder, while she actually checked that the injury Knight had inflicted him earlier had properly healed. Are you and Camilla all right, son? Yes, we're both perfectly fine. I left Camilla with the royal guards, and I had plenty of time to recover. Lith replied, Thank to the gods. Raz hugged every member of his family, making sure they were okay before letting them go. The only thing that kept me from having a stroke when those gigantic creatures appeared was that they were on our side. Then, he turned towards the small pack of magical beasts that served as both steeds and bodyguards for the children. I've never been so happy to have you annoying, drooling, for shedding beasts around the house. Thank you very much, guys. You saved my little girls. Abominus and the others didn't like Raz's words much, but his heartfelt gratitude touched their hearts, and the big stakes that came with it won their stomachs. You can stay in Trion's room as long as you want, Zinnia. Consider this as your home. Alina tried to send at least the kids to bed, but Zinnia refused to let them out of her sight. Are you still there, Lith? Marth's voice coming from the communication amulet drew everyone's attention. I've got good news and better news. The good news is that Vaster's last known position is right outside Lucia, so he must have managed to escape. The better news is that I'm certain he's alive and well. I've just received a message he sent a few minutes ago. Vaster says that he'll take some time off to recover from the wounds he sustained, and that he'll be back to work in a week tops. May the gods bless that man. Unlike Manohar, he always leaves a message and his contact information before taking a leave of absence. Can I please see the message? Zinnia jumped up, taking the amulet out of Litha's hands. I'm sorry, miss, but I've no idea who you are, and that's classified information. Marth's surprise only got worse as more and more calls popped on his amulet to inform him about Knight's attack. Only at Litha's and Orion's request did the headmaster share the recording with them. In the hologram, Vaster had taken care of reproducing most of his injuries. A patch covered his allegedly missing eye, a splint kept his right arm still, and thick bandages covered most of his body. Hey, Marth, I hate leaving you in hot waters out of the blue, but I've just fought several undead, and I got out of there alive just by the skin of my teeth. My apprentices have already treated my wounds, but it'll take me some time to recover and some more to fully rejuvenate my body. I've sent you all the paperwork for the next week and arranged the material for my lessons so that my substitute should have no problem following the program. Just one thing before I doze off. Please, tell Zinnia Yevel that I'm all right and that I'm sorry for letting her down. Vaster out. How dare you say that, Zogar? You almost died for me, and yet you apologize? Why did you call your boss instead of me? Zinnia said, yet the recorded message remained frozen. Please, calm down, Miss Yevel. Marth said, realizing his earlier blunder. Professor Vaster is a battle-hardened veteran, a royal forge master, and one of the best spell breakers I've had the pleasure to work with. Whatever are the reasons for his disappearance, I'm sure he'll contact you as soon as he can. Even though Headmaster Marth could face a dragon with a still heart, he had no idea how to deal with a woman's tears. Having no wish to be dragged in Vaster's personal business, he pretended to have an important call he couldn't miss and hung up. This makes no sense. Lith thought. Vaster couldn't escape with the air-sealing arrays, and based on how Zinnia described his conditions, it would have taken Faluel to save his life. How could the professor get away and heal enough to leave a message that fast? Chapter 11, 21 Scale Walker Armor Part 1. As Marth has just said, Professor Vaster is a man of many talents. Maybe he forge mastered something capable of bringing him to safety in the case he lost consciousness. Solus pondered. After all, Zinnia is no healer, and we both know that injuries can look way worse than they actually are. A mage doesn't survive as long as Vaster did without picking up a few tricks along the way. I mean, we are far from having the knowledge that royal forge masters share, and yet our equipment allowed us to hold our ground against night. Vaster could easily have an armor as powerful as war. By the time Protector returned home, Celia, the children, and the beasts were fast asleep in Litha's room. By the Great Mother, Scourge, I would have never thought that the day would come when I envied your paranoia. Ryman had spent almost an hour just looking at his asleep children and checking their bodies with invigoration before leaving the room. If not for the magical books and the equipment you provided to the other kings over the years, Naurend would have died, and with him my family. Paranoia or not, this doesn't answer an important question. Why didn't you call us for help, Lith? Quilla asked. Once dimensional magic had been restored, the royal guards had escorted Camilla and the earnest sister to the Verhen household. Because I had no idea what I was about to face, and I didn't want to endanger even more people. He replied, Let's be honest, Quilla, even after training with Faluel, your combat experience is limited. I knew that without dimensional magic or very powerful equipment, defeating an undead is hard. It's the same reason why I didn't contact Freya. No dimensional magic means no quick way out of a fight and no tricks. Physical strength becomes crucial, and as regular humans, your bodies would crumble after a few hits. You wouldn't even be able to cast a single spell. The two women had to admit that chanting in the middle of the battlefield was suicidal. To use their true power, mages required time and space to prepare their spells. Then what about me? Floria said. What point did it have turning me into an awakened if you didn't even trust me enough to stand by your side in moments of crisis? I didn't call you simply because I didn't want to break our cover. You're now very powerful, almost as much as me. But do you really think that your family would have opened the Urna's gate for you knowing about the attack? Even if they did, how would you have explained your abilities afterward? I can shape-shift into a wormling, but you only have your face. I knew about the Queen's core units protecting my family and acted accordingly. Lith said, You're right. Floria sighed. The moment Camilla called for help, Dad called all of us back home and put the mansion on lockdown. Freya and I were already there, so even if you called us, reaching Lucia would have taken us too much time. I still can't believe Archmage Dyrus did all this just because of what happened at the Bellin Mines. Camilla said. He put an entire village in danger and attacked innocent civilians. I hope that Archon Ernest finds the proof she needs to bust his ass into jail forever. For once Uriel's dad is innocent, Lith said, drawing the attention on himself. He then explained the details about his meeting with Knight, how the entire attack had been an attempt to turn him into a madman like Balkier and induce him to become her host. After meeting Dawn, I checked the royal archives about the horsemen. While Dawn is completely focused on following the mission that Baba Yaga gave her, and Dusk likes to pull strings behind the undead court scenes, Knight is bats hit crazy. She doesn't care about being seen or about the number of casualties. The Black Knight considers everything like some kind of sick game of which she makes the rules and then forces you to play at. In her case, immortality didn't give her wisdom, but rather made her indifferent to the consequences of her actions. Knight has no rush to complete her assignment, and everything she does is just her way to relieve the boredom that her long life causes her. Lith said. Then, he told the others about Xenogracia's arrival and the deal the abominations had cut with Baba Yaga. Are you telling me that if not for Vastor's visit, my sister and her children would be dead? Just because they happen to be your neighbors? Just saying those words made Camilla shudder in fear. Yes. Knight carefully planned everything and waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. The only thing she failed to predict was Vastor's frequent visits, and that only because he considers all humans beneath her. I think. Do you mind leaving us alone for a while? Camilla cut him short. The Verhen household was filled to the brim with guests, leaving Tista's room the only place available to hold their meeting. Tista, Protector, Faluel, and the Urnas could feel the tension in the room. They left without saying a word, just making sure to hush the walls to give the couple privacy. Please, tell me that you weren't about to question our relationship. Camilla said the moment the door closed and Lith conjured a hush spell of his own. I wasn't, but I expected you to do it. Tonight, your family went through a lot, and all because of me. I failed to predict Knight's attack, and I didn't even bother putting the slightest protection around Zinya's house despite I knew that something like this would have happened, sooner or later. In your shoes, I would be furious at me, and I can't blame you if you are. At this point, I'm a liability to you and to all those you love. Lith could read the anger in Camilla's eyes, yet he didn't shy away from her gaze. Lith was well aware of having failed her trust beyond reason. Gods, I can't believe you're such an idiot. She lashed out, but not how he had predicted. You and Vastor are cut from the same cloth. Always whining about failing someone, or about not being strong enough to bend Mogr to your whims. Bad things happen, and expecting to always be 10 steps ahead of life is just moronic. I'm not saying that I'm not scared by Knight's threat or at the idea of another attack, but surely I'm not going to blame you if that happens. You and Vaster gave my sister sight. Then you helped Zinnia to get her children back, and even got her a house. Vaster took care of her finances while your relatives showed her what a real family is. You two have given her a life and the opportunity to enjoy it to its fullest, yet you keep thinking that nothing is ever enough because you set your bar so high that you're never happy. Do you have any idea how many attempts on her life my job cost? How many times she would have risked her life if she didn't live right next to you, making every mercenary in their right mind turn down the job? Chapter 11:22 Scalewalker Armor Part 2. Because I do, and believe me, being Journey's assistant garnered me a lot of enemies. My role as a royal constable gives both me and Zinnia the right to have a detail, but not to be protected by the Queen's Corps, let alone an army of magical beasts. Camilla said. I still failed to. Say that again, and I swear to the gods that I'll slap you. She put her hand on his mouth, shutting him up. This very night, I opened up to you about my exes and told you how hard it is for me to trust people. Do you think I take any of this lightly? No, I don't. But I never accepted to date you because I expected you to be a god. I dated you because you seemed to like me despite my flaws, and because you cared for me. Has any of it changed after Knight's attack? She opened her hand enough to let him reply. No, but... Then answer me this. Did you provoke Knight in any way? Did you bring the undead army here? Did you ask the beasts to give Zinnia's family a lower priority compared to yours? Camilla asked, receiving a streak of no in reply. Then how could I possibly blame you? You're a victim as much as Zinnia. I blame that living legacy bitch for playing with the lives of so many innocent people. I blame that senile fart of Baba Yaga for not turning her precious daughter into a chamber pot at the first signs of madness. I blame the kingdom for not investing more resources to protect its civil servants' families with a few decent arrays. Bottom line, I blame a lot of people, but not you. Now that we have made a few things clear, what do you have to say to me? She said. I'm sorry for doubting you. Lith said with an awkward smile. Roan, tell me that you're all right, and that the next time you meet Knight, you'll beat her crazy ass until she's dead. Camilla hugged him, making sure for the umpteenth time that Lith wasn't hurt. I'm all right, and that the next time I meet Knight, I'll beat her crazy ass until she's dead. He said. Good boy. She ruffled his hair playfully before pushing Lith down on the bed and giving him a long, deep kiss to forget for a moment about that frightful night. Wait. He pushed her away, trying to get up. Too soon, she asked without even hiding her disappointment. No, but this is Tista's room. She'll kill me if something happens in here. Solas's tower, a few days later. The kingdom had gracefully taken care of the reconstruction works of both Celia's and Zinnia's houses. Between construction workers and mages, it had taken barely a couple of days to return everything as it was before the attack. Under Camilla's and Journey's insistence, Zinnia's house received a few magical home appliances and basic defensive arrays, while Faluel took care of reinforcing the defensive system of Celia's house. The Hydra felt guilty for letting down so many of her disciples and even her godchildren. Faluel connected Litha's, Celia's, and even Zinnia's house with an underground tunnel so that if anything cut dimensional magic off, they could all find shelter in the most protected building. Are you really going to do it? Foria asked. Yes, I'm aware that this is the only block of adamant I got, and that it hasn't been long since Faluel's lessons about forge mastering ended, but my new skinwalker armor is long overdue. Lith replied. Until a few months ago, I had no clue how to tap into runesmithing's true potential, nor did I have the blueprints to craft a decent armor, but now I can finally put Zalgrish's forge to good use. The silver lining in Knight's attack is that once Faluel gives me my mission, it will not be just her protecting my home, but the entire Beast Council. On the other hand, however, it means that failure is even less of an option than it already was. If I don't prove my wisdom, Faluel will stop teaching us magic, and I'll be back being a rogue awakened. Sure, Fila and Raga might offer me an apprenticeship, but I don't trust any of them near Solus. If they find out about Manadian's legacy, the undead will be the least of my problems. Lith placed his hand on the adamant forge, making it shape-shift into the form of a suit of armor resembling that he was looking on a royal forge master catalog. During the last few months, He and Solus had spent most of their free time experimenting with the runes the Skinwalker armor's pseudo-cores were comprised of. Only 2 out of 4 pseudo-cores were made of pure mana, while the rest required ingredients. Thanks to their ability in shaping cores, however, they had been able to imitate the effects of the ingredient-generated cores with their mana and to test how altering their rune strings would affect the final result. Putting their theories into practice always required them to spend part of the resources they had stockpiled, because simple mana lacked the properties of the real deal, like the ability of the Thunderbird's plume to amplify energy-based effects. Useless to say, by the time they were done with their experiments, their orichalcum reserves ran dangerously low, and lots of people had received a brand new Skinwalker armor. "Thanks for letting us spectate, Lith," Quilla said. "As a fellow Forge Master, you've no idea what it means to me seeing what a mage with a tower can achieve. On top of that, I never witnessed an awakened Forge Mastery, and I'm curious to see how different it is from my own." "You're welcome, Quilla. It's not like you can learn anything from this demonstration. Solus and I have already determined which runes we'll use for the enchantments, which will be engraved on the armor, and how to split different abilities among the cores. Without such information, all you're in for is a light show," Lith said with a chuckle. "Unless you are his lovely, gorgeous big sister. Not only do I have access to their notes, I also got one of their best prototypes of Lithwalker armor." Tista grinned from ear to ear as her clothes turned into a suit of silvery armor embedded with several magic crystals. It resembled Litha's hybrid form so closely that it gave everyone the impression Tista could shapeshift as well. "Scale Walker armor. It doesn't allow people to turn into me. That would be creepy as heck. Now stand back, please." Lith signaled them to move away as the Forge Mastering Lab became enveloped with a blue light that isolated both him and the armor from the rest of the room. Thanks to Zulgrish's forge, Lith didn't need Zekel's help to shape the armor, only his own willpower and imagination. After checking that every single detail, from the elm resembling his hybrid form to the joints being properly reinforced, the preparation phase began. The adamant forge was a block of solid metal so big that Lith could have made at least 3 armor and a couple of weapons out of it. Unfortunately, to do that he would have to use the adamant in its natural state. Chapter 11:23 Scalewalker Armor Part 3. Lith shape-shifted into his hybrid form, taking a deep breath while Solus erected several barriers to protect every part of the tower from the origin flames. The mystical fire didn't discriminate between enemies and allies, burning everything on its path, be it physical in nature or not. Without a proper set of protections, the amount of origin flames necessary to purify the adamant would damage the tower and cause a great deal of pain to Solus. Lith slowly exhaled a soft stream of origin flames that engulfed the armor inside out. Ever since Lith had quit the army, he had devoted himself to learning how to control origin flames and how to enhance their purifying ability while suppressing their destructive effect at the same time. Due to the lack of time between all his other magical research and taking care of his personal life, he had still a long way to go before mastering them. Yet Lith had already learned more than enough to tap into the full potential of Zulgrish's forge. With each breath, the suit of armor that at the beginning was big enough to accommodate a giant became smaller and thinner. Along with the impurities, the forge would lose mass and shrink accordingly. Instead of spewing flames non-stop, Lith would stop from time to time to check the quality of his work. This way, he wouldn't miss when the origin flames had not spread evenly or had affected the exterior part of the armor more than the internal. Such mistakes would have compromised the quality of the final product if not for Zulgrish's mastery over metalsmithing. All Lith had to do to fix the flaws in his job was to shapeshift the armor again so that it would restore its original proportions. It's as boring as watching paint dry, but Lith has no other way to purify the armor and study origin flames at the same time. Tista said to the others via a mind to not disturb his focus. Nowrand and the Urnas found the process far from boring. Under Litha's control, the mystical flames danced around the adamant and seeped into it, moving akin to a living being, sometimes even giving the spectators the impression to see visions of primordial times, back when Mogar was still a lava planet. Lith used his willpower to adjust the density of the origin flames, changing their temperature when necessary, and with it their color. Tista found the purification process boring because she had seen it countless times, whereas to anyone else, it looked like a black dragon dancing with fire fairies. Either I find a way to get Zalgrish to spill the beans about how he can make metal shape shift, or I'll have to practice a lot to avoid making so many mistakes. Lith thought, we can do both things. Yet I'd like to point out how this is the first time we're working on adamant, so I'd say that you're doing a wonderful job. As I would say, progress, not perfection. As Camilla would say, you're an idiot. Solus giggled. Lith hated when both the most important women in his life agreed on something because it usually meant he was dead wrong. I'm never wrong. Being wrong is for idiots, may Marie Curie forgive me. I'm starting to sound like Manohar. The terror the thought inspired made Lith stop whining and return focusing on the task at hand. By the time Lith had finished purifying the suit of armor to perfection, the mass of metal had been reduced to the point of having the proper density and size to cover Lith's hybrid form while having a bit of metal to spare. Lith used it to reinforce the joints and made sure that they properly distributed the weight of the armor. The final result left even Solus in awe. By my maker, Lith, check the armor with invigoration. The metal looked like the purest and most polished silver, yet some part of it perfectly reflected the light, while others completely absorbed it. Fuck me sideways. Guys, you must see this. Lith said, causing Naurin to swear. I've got no invigoration nor a wand. Care to elaborate for me? Despite the Rizar had worked hard to become less edgy, he still resented Moger for not giving him a shred of spirit magic. Naurin was the only one in the group incapable of using forge mastering spells, and it made him feel like an outcast. This is how a purified orichalcum armor looks through invigoration. Solus used the tower's abilities to project a hologram where the world energy seeped and spread evenly inside the metal. This, instead, is how the purified adamant looks like. The hologram changed, showing several vortexes where the world energy accumulated inside the armor, but failed to condense enough to form a proper energy core. After being treated with origin flames, the metal almost behaves like Davris. Alas, almost is not enough. Solus sighed. Indeed. Lith pondered on the discovery. We can say that orichalcum is akin to a cyan core and adamant to a blue core. After refining the core to bright blue with origin flames, I brought it close to the violet level of the Davris, but that's it. That's it, my shiny ass. Solus said. This means the armor will be much more powerful than we expected, but also that crafting it will be much more difficult. Luckily, we have valiant helpers. Solus made chairs and tonics appear for everyone. You can count on me. Just tell me what I need to do. Floria said. I'll need you to fuel a few things with your mana, leaving Solus free to help me in the most crucial moments. Lith said, handing to everyone a copy of the Academy spell necessary to conjure world energy inside a magic circle. The spell was simple enough that even Naurin, who had studied fake magic from Lith's Academy book, managed to learn it at a first glance. The others had no need for it since their experience with forge mastering made the spell second nature to them. After making sure that the purified adamant couldn't be further improved without compromising its stability, Lith took 7 violet mana crystals out of his pocket dimension and cast the bonding spell. Each gemstone was as big as his fist and cut to resemble a diamond. After spending the last few months in the tower mines, the purity of the mana crystals that Orion had gifted Lith for saving his daughters had further increased, but they still didn't have a tinge of white in them. Lith had chosen to use Orion's crystals rather than the Orc Shaman's because not only had it reached a shade of violet so bright that it made him hope for the best, but also because its size allowed it to spawn new violet crystals more easily compared to smaller gemstones. Another flaw in my original design of the Skinwalker armor is that I kept using a single crystal. Normal Skinwalker armor are made of cloth, while mine is made of metal. To tap into the adamant's ability to boost its own defensive properties when imbued with mana, the armor needs a proper energy source. Lith thought. The armor started to float in mid-air while the 7 gemstones followed its every movement, orbiting around the armor like planets with their sun. Chapter 11:24 Scalewalker Armor Part 4. The bonding spell produced several blue threads made of pure mana that passed through the crystals and the armor over and over again. With each passage, the crystals closed in the armor until they touched its surface. The metal seemed to turn liquid, offering no resistance to the gemstones that sunk in until only their top remained visible. Bonding was one of the many forge mastering spells created by fake mages that employed the best next thing to spirit magic. Each blue strand worked as both a mana for that allowed the energy from the crystal to seep into the metal, preventing its rejection, and as stitches, keeping the two together until the end of the process. Lith took such effects for granted, whereas Naurin had focused his studies on such branches of forge mastering in the hope of unlocking spirit magic. Lith placed the 7 gemstones in pairs on the shoulders, arms, and hips of the armor, leaving the 7th for the neck area. Being bonded at the same time, the crystals created a collective mana circulatory system that spread evenly throughout the whole armor. Isn't it too much? I get that you are strong, little brother, but 7 violet crystals are a tough cookie to infuse anything with even a single spell. Tista asked. As long as Lith didn't need her help, Solus kept projecting the hologram of how the Scalewalker armor appeared on Mana Sense to allow the others to better follow the enchanting procedure. In any other circumstances, you would be right. With my old skill, it would have been impossible, but that's what runesmithing is for. Lith replied while drawing several strings of mystical runes in the air. The first set of his choosing seeped inside the armor, bringing with it Lith's energy signature. The mana from the runes and the world energy released by the crystals slowly merged together until they couldn't be distinguished anymore. To reduce the rejection of his mana, Lith had poured in the set of runes so much energy that he needed to use invigoration before moving on to the second set. At this point, a forge master would need to take a break, and, without runesmithing, it would be too long a time for the incantation to succeed. Quilla explained to Naurin. The good thing of the preparatory phase is that there is no rush, allowing even us fake mages who are unable to quickly restore our energy to split the process into smaller steps. The following 6 sets of runes required much less focus and energy, yet Lith had to use invigoration 2 more times to engrave them. The second set amplified the strength of the pseudo-cores, while the third set would disperse the excess energy during an all-out fight. Together, they would allow the adamant to better channel the energy that the enchantments would release and reduce the stress that the boosted pseudo-cores would experience. Even with the mana circulatory system, holding too many powerful spells would otherwise weaken the metal over time and cause the imbued cores a mana overload. The fourth set of runes would allow the armor to replenish its energy reserves faster than normal. The runes absorbed the surrounding world energy and would aid the mana crystals to empower the pseudo-cores once put in their place. The fifth and the sixth set would respectively absorb part of the kinetic and magical energy that would hit the armor during a fight, turning them into a protective energy field. The seventh and last set would cloak both the pseudo-cores and the rune formations, making it impossible for any regular forge master to study them. From his last trade with Orion, Lith had learned how to protect his secrets. Floria's father had given him a true masterpiece like War, but had made sure that no one, not even Lith, could reproduce it, whereas the workings behind Lith's skinwalker had been easily unraveled. Once he was done with the runes, Lith took a tonic and a short break to save as much invigoration as he could before the enchantment process started. He took all the ingredients he needed out of his pocket dimension, studying them carefully. A normal skinwalker armor needed 4 pseudo-cores, but his scalewalker armor had to do better than that. Lith prepared the pelt of a polymorphic monster species known as a skinwalker that would give the armor its morphing abilities. Then, a few Hydra scales gently offered by Faluel that would improve the hardness of the metal while keeping it flexible. Also, he set a bowl of slime goop to use it as a stabilizer during the various forge mastering steps, a petal of the golden phoenix flower that the Dryads had gifted him years ago, and a thunderbird's plume to boost the base material's defensive properties. Thunderbirds had sturdy feathers as hard as iron, and their affinity to lightning granted them a natural electromagnetic field capable of weakening most attacks. The last ingredients to forge master a scalewalker armor were the pseudo-core of a dimensional item to store the clothes that the armor would reproduce, and a pseudo-core holding the matrix of the full guard spell. Solus's help usually makes such spell useless to me, but now that she's regaining her body, I can't force her to sacrifice her personal life just to act as my bodyguard in the case I'm attacked. Lith thought. By imbuing full guard into the armor, I will remove its cast time and the need to focus to keep the spell active during a fight. My only regret is that the aura will be visible, but adding gold to cloak it would weaken the adamant and make the process even harder. If I had more than one forge, I could make a recon armor and a battle armor, but since I'm no spy, the battle version takes priority. After a light meal and some rest brought Lith back to his peak condition, he refined the ingredients. The process required to channel his mana inside each one of them, enhancing their magical properties while destroying their physical forms. In the past, Lith would use the released energy to form pseudocores, but now he knew better. He let the energy from the Skinwalker pelt and the Hydra's scales to merge with his mana, forming the runes of his choice before assembling them into pseudocores. By the Great Mother, the spectators looked with awe at the two rainbow-colored spheres in front of their eyes that were so similar, yet so different. The Skinwalker's ability to shape-shift made it capable of changing colors as well, giving its pseudo-core a dull light. The power of all 7 elements filled Faluel's scales, instead, making the resulting pseudo-core emit a vibrant light as it absorbed world energy and split into its components. Lith sighed while looking at the golden phoenix petal before burning it with his mana. Each flower was a priceless treasure, and he had only a few left. The petal produced a string of fiery runes that assembled to form what would be the Scalewalker armor power core. Powerful enchantments and runes needed Lith's mana to work, whereas crystals could provide the armor solely with world energy. The power core would not only fuel all enchantments, but also hold the other pseudo-cores together, keep them from clashing with each other, and turn the world energy into mana-bearing Lith's energy signature. Chapter 1125 A Forgemaster's Pride Part 1. The plume of the Thunderbird produced a yellow pseudo-core that was comprised of pure air element. The static discharges that the golden orb emitted became less and less frequent as Lith rewrote part of its natural runes to make it more stable. All the runes related to the emission of electricity are a waste of mana. I only need those that create the protective magnetic field to boost the Scalewalker armor's defense. Lith thought. As for the pseudo-core of the dimensional item and the spell matrix of full guard, Lith knew them so well that he needed but a thought to form them. Then, he merged the 5 cores together, using the slime good from time to time to reduce the rejection effect that the different energies caused. Slimes were incredible creatures with amazing vitality and capable of adapting to any environment. Once dispersed inside the Forge Mastering spell, the goop produced a fine mist that saturated the 5 pseudo-cores and harmonized their magical wavelength, allowing Lith to make them overlap with minimal effort. Solus, Lith said. On it, Solus redirected part of the world energy coursing through the tower to form a blue circle of light that engulfed the adamant armor and the pseudo-core that started to orbit around each other. Violent arcs sparked between them as the world energy from the adamant flowed into the pseudo-core's mana and vice versa. The arcs soon stabilized, forming a cycle that made matter and energy resonate with each other. Lith took out his orichalcum hammer, now reforged with runes and a violet crystal, while Solus wielded her own and charged both hammers with world energy. Guys, the moment Solus starts helping me, I need you to take over the circle. She already did most of the work. You only have to keep it stable and fueled. Tista, Floria, be ready to use invigoration on yourself or the others as soon as they need it. I have only one shot at this, so let's make it count. Lith didn't wait for an answer and struck at the pseudo-core with his hammer, using the combined effect of the mana in his body and that stored inside the hammer to force the armor to accept the foreign energy. The strike released a pulse of blue light so violent that it almost knocked everyone but Tista off their feet. She knew how Lith worked and had braced for impact while the others had never witnessed anything like that. It will be like that every time one of the hammers hits. Keep channeling world energy or the following blasts will destabilize the circle, Tista said via the mind link. Thanks for warning us in time. The others would have liked to give Tista a piece of their mind, but the moment they saw Solus move her hand, they focused solely on their duty. Ever since Solus had gained a deep cyan mana core, her strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Yet even with the help of runesmithing, she still lacked the mana necessary to overcome the resistance that the adamant offered. While Lith took care of merging the armor and the core with his superior might, she fixed all the imperfections that the process caused in the pseudo-core with her finer mana control. The technique allowed them to both improve their chance of success and to greatly reduce the time that each forge mastering process required. Wielding such powerful energy took a great toll on both of them and needed a constant use of invigoration. Time was of the essence because the more Lith used invigoration, the less effective it became. The hammer blows flowed into each other in a symphony of silvery clangs, producing a raging storm of blue light. With each hit of Lith's hammer, the pseudo-core would go deeper inside the armor, but the world energy that coursed through the adamant opposed to the process with such strength that it caused deformations in the core, compromising the integrity of the spells it held. With each hit of Solas's hammer, the bumps and indenture from the previous clash would disappear, shaping the pseudo-core into a perfect sphere again. She had to make sure to preserve and fix all 5 cores at the same time so that they could withstand Lith's working. During that time, Lith replenished his body with mana and injected part of it through the runes. That way, the energy coming from the armor couldn't mess with Solas's work due to being temporarily synced with their energy signature. Lith and Solas complemented each other, allowing them to focus solely on their respective tasks without the fear of any external variable. Their combined forge mastering technique not only required the power that only a mage tower could provide, but also 2 mages to work as one. By the time the Scalewalker armor was complete, Lith was running on fumes and Solas had to give up on her energy form to keep the tower from collapsing. I think that congratulations are in order, little brother. Tista said amid pants. Your work looks like a masterpiece. Yeah, but I expect to be properly compensated. Naurin laid on the ground, trying to catch his breath. Without us, you would have never succeeded. Do you really think I allowed you guys to spectate just out of the goodness of my heart? Lith replied with a sneer. We never worked on adamant before, and I assumed that we might encounter several unexpected complications. Based on my experience, however, it should have been nothing that a squad of powerful mages, most of whom practice forge mastery at that, couldn't solve. Worst case scenario, Solas would have focused on keeping the process on hold while we brainstormed the issue. You sure know how to make your friends feel appreciated. Freya said. Does your brilliant contingency plan involve a good meal? Because I'm starving. My plan involves all the food and drinks you can eat plus the time for a hot shower. Every time I push myself to my limits, I sweat bullets and I can't appreciate a good meal while smelling like a wet dog. Lith said. Everyone went to their respective room, replaying the forge mastering procedure in their heads while pondering if they might be able to do the same. Soon, they all came to the same conclusion. No matter what I do, it's impossible. I would need to have several powerful mages to replace the mage tower in the process of conjuring and fine-tuning such a huge amount of world energy. On top of that, with Solas's help, Lith can exceed the limits of his mana core, crafting items that go beyond what a bright blue core can do. I wonder if Orion/Dad has a violet core. They thought almost in unison. The more they thought about it, the more everything seemed unfair, tainting admiration with a fair share of envy. Being friends, however, instead of ruminating such thoughts behind Lith's back, they told him to his face. Sure, it must be nice having both a mage tower and origin flames. That's the same as cheating since not even Dad can purify metals with such ease. Quilla said, expressing the grievance of every single forge master on Mogar. Indeed, meeting Solas saved my life in more than one way and provided me with the best partner I could ask for. Lith had no problems admitting they were right.